Chairman's correspondence. Honorary Alderman Terence Alec Dix. It is my sad duty to inform the Council of a death on the 16th of November 2021 of Honorary Alderman Terence Alec Dix. Mr Dix represented the Watling Tamworth County Electoral Division on the County Council from 1981 to 2009. He was leader of the Council from 1996 to 2007 and Chairman of the County Council from 2007 to 2009. Mr Dix served on a number of council committees, including the Cultural and Recreational Services Group Committee, Development Services Group Committee, Planning Committee, Education Group Committee, Policy and Resources Group Committee, Social Services Group Committee, Foreign Emergency Planning Committee, Enterprise and Economic Committee, and the Highways Committee, on which he served as Chairman. Mr Dix was appointed Honorary Alderman in 2009. Former County Councillor Kenneth Gordon Gant. May I also inform the Council of a recent death of former County Councillor Kenneth Gordon Gant. Mr Gant represented the Perrycrofts Tamworth County Electoral Division on the County Council between 1985 and 1993. He served on a number of council committees, including the Fire and Public Protection Committee, Social Service Committee, Highways Committee, and the Libraries, Arts and Archives Committee. I would now like to call Councillor Jeremy Oakes.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And if I may say a few words on both of these, starting with Kenneth Gant. Growing up in a political family, I don't think there was a time when I didn't know Ken Gant. And I remember canvassing for him and knocking up in the 92 election when he first got onto Tamworth Borough. I'm too young to have known him on the County Council, but I can talk about his time at the Borough. As you've stated, Ken served Tamworth on the County Council for 8 years and then the Borough Council for 18 years. And he was always passionate about representing those in need and played an active role in the health agenda, sitting and chairing the Tamworth Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee and attending meetings at Stafford as the Tamworth representative. But it was outside the council that Ken really showed his passion. He served in the military and would often tell stories about his time and active service in Egypt. And this went on to lead to a lifetime of support for the Royal British Legion in Tamworth and the Poppy Appeal. I was lucky enough to get elected onto the Borough Council in 2000 on the same day as Ken returned to the council after a 4-year absence. And we walked into the members' room together, and all of a sudden his face dropped. And you knew when Ken was upset because it was on his face, you could tell. And he stormed over to a bookcase, and there was just a picture frame lay face down on the top of the bookcase. I hadn't even noticed it. He stormed over, picked it up, fumed, why isn't this on display? And it was a simple certificate to the council congratulating them on their Poppy Appeal and the money they'd raised. But his passion was that should be on display, and the fuming just demonstrated the passion that Ken had for the subject. Now, maybe it was his military service, or maybe it's just his competitive nature. But there's one thing that's always stuck with me about Ken, particularly when he was Mayor of Tamworth in 2004. And as Mayor, you attend parades and black tie dinners. And Ken would often stand with the Mayor's drivers, other mayors, leaders and what have you, and compare the sharpness of the crease down the front of your trousers or how highly polished your shoes were. And Ken's always were the sharpest crease and the most polished shoes. But for Ken, they were formal occasions. And the crease down your trousers and the polished shoes were a sign of the respect for the occasion you were at. He was a dedicated, passionate guy. He fought for the people of Spittal Ward and Perrycrofts Division at the County Council. And I think I, for one, am grateful for the contribution that Ken has made to Tamworth and Staffordshire since 1985. If I may, Mr Chairman, move to Terry Dix. Just to clarify, those that don't know, Terry was my uncle. He was the older brother of my mother, who we lost in November 19. And just on that family connection, just an anecdote, Prince Charles came to Tamworth in 2007 to form the Mercian Regiment. Big display, big military event. Uncle Terry, as leader of the County Council, was there, spoke to Prince Charles and said, "Hello, I'm Terry Dix, leader of the County Council." Turned to the Mayor of Tamworth and said, "And this is Michael Oates, my brother-in-law. This is the Mayoress, Mary Oates, my sister. And this is Jeremy Oates, he's leader of the council and my nephew." And Prince Charles said, "It's very incestuous, isn't it, in Tamworth?" I won't repeat my mother's response. We'll leave that. But no, Mr Chairman, at the last full council, we were able to congratulate Terry on receiving the Federal Cross. And I commented then how rare we get the opportunity to recognise somebody while they're still with us. Obviously, I wasn't aware that the tragic events that were going to unfold. Following that meeting, the press got involved in got in contact with Terry, and the story ran in a number of newspapers, so he got the coverage for that I think he deserved. I also had the opportunity to tell Terry and his wife about the comments that were made in this chamber, and I might have named a few of you guys. But Terry was grateful for the comments, and Pat, his wife, was particularly grateful because, in her words, you don't very often get nice comments, especially from councillors. So they were grateful for the comments we made last time. That certainly has supported Pat in that time, and actually that was the last time I spoke to Terry. Terry was a number of things to a number of people. I had the privilege of knowing him as a family member, but also knowing him and working with him in our roles when I was leader of the Borough Council before and when he was leader of the County Council. And I remember some lessons he's taught me. We sat at a leader chief exec meeting talking about two-tier working. How the agenda moves on. And I wasn't happy with something, so I thought I'll push back here. You know, me, wet behind the ears, new leader. Terry, as experienced as anybody possibly could be. And I said, I'm not sure I can make that decision. I need to go back and talk to my cabinet. And Terry looked at me from the chairman's position and said, I'm taking this decision as leader of my council. How you run your council is your problem, but we're here to make decisions today. And I kept quiet for the rest of the meeting. But Terry belonged to a time when local government was different. We had different influences when Terry was involved to what we have now. And he also belonged to a time where there were significant challenges with Birmingham and its expansion. And whilst Terry wasn't involved necessarily in the housing expansion in Tamworth, he was certainly around at the time. And what Terry's drive was how to make the best of the opportunities that a large increase in Tamworth was bringing. We trebled in size in about 10 years. And we often celebrate Tamworth's connectivity. From Tamworth, you're on the motorway network. You can get to any major city in a couple of hours quite easily on a good day. But the M42 was originally planned to skirt around the south of Birmingham and join the M5 to the M6 in a similar way to the M25 around London. Now, Terry and a few others fought hard and made a significant number of enemies in a place called Water Orton. And that's because Water Orton wasn't going to be affected by the M42. But Terry was adamant the M42 had to connect to Tamworth. And he lobbied and fought. He wanted a 3-lane motorway all the way. He didn't get that, but he was successful in arguing for the M42 to be extended to Tamworth and to Junction 11, where it joins the A446, allowing connectivity to Burton-on-Trent and Swadlincote. That was a massive thing, and I wonder if we could have that influence nowadays in local government. But that connected Tamworth with its growing population to industry and the rest of the country. Terry was one of the original place shapers that we talk about, certainly in the second half of the 20th century. His influence on Tamworth, Staffordshire and the West Midlands Regional Assembly was significant, but he never lost his love for the place where he grew up. He grew up in Dostal in Tamworth. He lived there until the end of his life. He brought his children up there, and he was still involved in the Residents' Association even a few weeks ago, as well as involved in the local branch of the Royal British Legion. Now, I've already mentioned the comments we made last time. I'm not going to repeat those, but I'll ask people to remember the comments we made and the support we gave Terry on his award of the Federal Cross. But I'll finish with whether we agreed or not with some of Terry's points, and different political parties tend to have the odd disagreement. I think what we can say is Terry was a giant in the world of Staffordshire politics. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure how to sum up nearly 30 years of friendship. There's so much I could say. Ken was honest, he had integrity, and was a caring, loving man. There was a time my daughter Kirsty, who was around 3 years old, like a toddler, wouldn't eat anything I gave her. We popped into Ken's, and Ken tried to steal a crisp out of her bag. She looked at him as if to say, "These are my crisps, but you can have one," and then sat on the floor and ate the whole bag. Toddler starvation for session finished. Around 5 years ago, Ken had been ill in hospital, and when he came home, he wanted to go to the seaside. We took him to Weston-super-Mare. Being stubborn like he was, he wouldn't have a wheelchair and he wouldn't have a mobility scooter. So we spent most of the time resting with him on benches. We didn't tell him off, he was happy, and that was what mattered. Ken will be sorely missed across Tamworth and Staffordshire, where he did so much for so many. Tamworth also lost another great, as we've just heard from Councillor Oates, Terry Dix, a week after losing Ken. Our politics were poles apart, but Terry and I were good friends. He was chairman of the Twinning Association, he was our president, and at full council last time we were praising him for his work in this area. He served as chairman of the school governing body at Wilnecote High School for 50 years, another one that served his community, and both Ken and Terry were awarded Freeman of the Borough in Tamworth. Rest easy to you both, Tamworth is a richer place for having you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Charlotte Atkins.
I didn't serve on the County Council with Terry Dix, but I was in Parliament at the time, representing Staffordshire Moorlands. So I met Terry on many occasions, and he would give everyone a great welcome to the County Council as leader. Having served for 27 years, he made a huge contribution in so many ways to social services, as a member of the Police and Fire Authority. And of course, he was a great character, full of bonhomie and great company. What shone out from Terry was his passion for, well, Tamworth first of all, but Staffordshire as a whole. And I think that although he was leader of the council, what was clear was his focus was always on the community he served, because I think that's where his strength came from. So at our last full council meeting in October, we paid tribute to Terry for getting the Federal Cross of Merit, the equivalent of the OBE from the German government. So I'm really pleased that he was able to enjoy that. He clearly did enjoy it. And I saw an interview he did where he spoke very fluently about the honour and what he did in politics. So the great thing was he was totally in charge of his facilities right up until his last days. And I think, I mean, obviously he got the Cross of Merit for working with his Twinning Association, which I believe that he helped set up when he was mayor of Tamworth 30 years ago. And I think that's because he recognised the importance of international friendship and understanding if we're not to repeat the horrors of war. And of course, he also, talking about war, he also took a keen interest in the Cannock Chase military cemetery. and the memorial to fallen German soldiers, helping to arrange visits for young people from Bremen to come to Staffordshire to tend the graves alongside British youngsters. So that demonstrates his tireless promotion of world peace, international friendship, and understanding. So I think that what everyone said, what a fantastic legacy he's left, not just in terms of Tamworth, but of course, obviously to Staffordshire as a whole. So I think he leaves a fantastic legacy, and I think only a few of us could probably hope to leave such an important legacy as he did. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan White, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My microphone is playing up, so I might have to use a different one. But there are occasions in life where the words of those people who knew them best will suffice, and I think the words of Councillor Tina Clements and Councillor Oates and Councillor Atkins have captured the moment perfectly, and I have nothing further to add to those except my condolences to their families and friends.
Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear. I was mulling over this morning and didn't realise that it's 12 odd years since Terry stood down as a county councillor after being leader and chairman in his last couple of years. And I've memories when I got on in '87, both Ken Gant and Terry Dix welcomed me to the county council. It was a different age. We had Stoke-on-Trent in the council, and they're both very similar, but from completely different political backgrounds, as Jeremy has mentioned, and Tina. They're both community-based, Staffordshire through and through. Ken and his smile, welcoming, really, life and soul of the party almost, and telling you what he's been doing and everything else, and welcoming you on to the council. And Terry as well, I've got so many memories of him when I was leader of the opposition against him for 5 years and for 2 years against John Taylor, and he was chairman. And sort of memorable things, like there was one budget and he said it's only the cost of a packet of chips a week. Well, he rued the day that he said that, because we kept reminding him that it was a fish and chip budget. And but he took it all in good heart, which is the thing about this chamber. But there's one thing that was very close to both the hearts, actually, and that is the armed forces. And when we took control in 2009, there was one thing that Terry got in touch with me about and said, whatever you do, I hope you don't pull back from this. And that was our commitment to the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. And Terry did a lot of the work in the beginning that we carried on with, and put some money toward £3 million towards it, actually, as it is what it is today, the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. And that echoes some of the comments that people have made about the German war graves. Of course, back in 1981 and 1980, when Terry got on the county council, and Ken, when he was on in 1985, we've got to think now, 1985, that the war was still fresh in that generation's mind, and peace and reconciliation was part of it. And Terry managed to get the remembrance service at Cannock, and he got the British Legion there, which I don't think many of you will understand what a major step that was for that generation to turn up at Cannock, where the German war dead are buried. People that were trying to kill them, and they were trying to kill. So, you know, both of them, real community politicians, and I only hope that when somebody serves for such a short time on the county council, so long ago, like Ken Gant, that people still remember the contribution that they gave to the county council and the people of Staffordshire, just as Terry did. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I now ask members to stand and observe a 1 minute silence in memory of Mr Dix and Mr Gant? Councillor Alan White, will you move consideration of a statement, please? The statement of the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I've now got this microphone. I move consideration of the Leader's statement. Mr Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to move an additional item on consideration, a statement reference Arthur Labinjo Hughes, if I may, Mr Chairman. Fellow councillors, I know every member of this council will have been shocked and appalled when reading media coverage of the trial of the father and stepmother of Arthur Labinjo Hughes last week. A truly terrible, awful case. This tragic case is a solemn reminder of the County Council's vital role, working alongside our partners to keep the most vulnerable young people in Staffordshire safe from harm and neglect. Our social workers do an outstanding job every day, often in hugely challenging circumstances. We will be looking very closely at the outcomes of the inquiries into Arthur's death to make sure that we are doing everything possible in Staffordshire to protect and support the children who need our care. Mr Chairman.
Councillor Mrs Charlotte Atkins.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Such tragic cases are a wake-up call for all those who are responsible for keeping vulnerable children safe. Staffordshire has had its own cases where danger signs have been missed, so the county is not immune from incidents like this, even though our social workers do an absolutely great job. But so what is being done to ensure that our more experienced social workers share their experience about failings with newer social workers so that the service can learn from them? I think we often learn more from our mistakes than from our successes. And what is the County Council doing to track so-called ghost children who have disappeared from teachers' line of sight? Because I think, you know, post-pandemic, we have lost sight of some children. I think it's really vital in the aftermath of this case that we redouble our efforts to make sure that no vulnerable child goes unnoticed. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. What a tragedy. So many missed opportunities. Obviously, the serious case review will look into all of those things with poor Arthur Labinjo Hughes' case, and no doubt that investigation will throw up the flaws. But just on first glance, as you know, as the leader will understand, when you're the leader of the county council, the buck stops with you. Every 2 weeks, I would have a briefing on all the cases that are going on and an update on those that are ongoing throughout the council. Some of the stories, colleagues, are horrific, and you don't pass them on. Mike Lawrence, when he was the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, inherited a poor, requires improvement service. The backlog on cases is horrendous. I made sure that children and adult services weren't put into one, because children's services would be the smaller, forgotten service. But with arduous work by children's social workers, senior officers, Mike Lawrence in particular, it moved round from being poor and requires improvement to being good and almost outstanding. A lot of hard work has to go into that. A lot of support for children's social workers. I've had them meet me in the street outside and thank me for their support when I was leader. Because they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. It's too easy to have headlines in the papers that a child has been taken into care when it shouldn't have been, or that a child wasn't when it shouldn't have been. There were so many signs there that you think, well, it should have been there. So I can remember sitting down with Chief Constable Cunningham and discussing a multi-agency safeguarding hub, which many of you, because of COVID, won't have had the chance to go and have a look at. Would you believe that in times gone by, that if a child rang up the social worker and said that Dad's dimming 7 bells out of Mum, that because of data protection and various other things, they couldn't ring the police up. The idea of the MASH, as it's called, is that they can swap information quickly and a policeman can turn up and say, is everything all right? That good practice is the one way that we can lift children's social workers throughout the country, by sharing it with others. The first step is understanding that your service requires improvement and that you need to help your children's social workers. I spent an awful lot of time on that. It wasn't my portfolio, but as I said, the buck stops with the leader. And this sad case of Arthur, you know, what on earth was going on when they've got video in the living room? I've put a question down today. One of the first warning signs is non-attendance at school. As the Children's Commissioner said, nationally, it's down in the 86%. Thankfully, ours are at 93.4%. But you can never say never. That's the first rule when you have a children's Ofsted inspection. You can never say it will never happen here. There will be something going on somewhere that everybody needs to be alert to. And remember that you, as county councillors, are corporate parents and responsible for every single one of the looked after children that we have in our care, and those that are at risk. It rests on us as county councillors. That's why it's so important that when you hear stories like Arthur Labinjo Hughes, you sit and reflect about what your authority is doing and how you can help authorities like Solihull, and I have to say this, Stoke-on-Trent.
Councillor Ian Parry, please.
Thank you. Chairman, I'm not sure that Ofsted ratings alone keep children safe. I'm not sure if process alone keeps children safe. I think it's all about the professionalism of the people that we must value the most, and yet we value them not as much. We must ask ourselves why there are so many vacancies for social care workers in children's services. Why is it we can't recruit enough people to do those jobs? And why is it, therefore, we give too much to those people to actually keep children safe? It's not about the bureaucracy that sits around it. As important as process is, as important as checks are, as important as robust intervention is, there's much more to it than that. They say that it takes a village to raise a child. I wonder why they say that. And I think it's because this is not a problem that can be fixed by government or councils alone. This is a societal problem. There is no system known to man that can prevent determined evil not to persist. These people scheme and avoid detection, avoid observation. And whilst this is an appalling case, there are many cases that would equally appall you if you knew about them that go through children's courts, of brutality and cruelty to children that would make you have sleepless nights, that which have evaded both police investigation and monitoring by social care, determining people to do evil to children. Who knows why? The societal challenge, therefore, is that we're the village, not just this council, this corporate parents or anything like that. As society as a whole, all of us have a responsibility to keep children safe. Early this year, there were at least 2 brutal killings. There are brutal killings of adults on a regular basis, as we all know, but 2 that raised alarm in this country early in the year. One where a police officer abducted, kidnapped, assaulted and killed a young woman, and a similar rape and murder of a young woman. That resulted not just in headlines and indignation in this country, it resulted in marches. It resulted in calls for more to be done to keep women safe. Quite rightly, absolutely, we applaud all of that. Equally, we must also say it's our duty as adults to keep children safe and not abdicate that responsibility to a council, to social workers who every day of their working life have to make not just difficult decisions, not just decisions which are actually career-threatening on a daily basis, because when things go wrong, this isn't a march or an indignation of the nation. This is people want people's heads to roll, and usually it's the social workers involved who've done their best making impossible decisions on a daily basis. This country is not a draconian society. We don't step into people's homes and snatch their children. We don't poke our nose into people's lives on a regular basis. This has to be done with care and sensitivity and with respect for people's rights. And it makes the job even more difficult when we have to take all of that into account. So let's not be complacent that we are an Ofsted good or outstanding. We are nothing until we keep every child safe. And we must, as a council, ensure that our society here in Staffordshire plays its role in that.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Edgeler.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this, but I feel that I have to because I want every councillor in this chamber to understand that as a foster parent and an adoptive parent of a child that was in care in the early 1990s, and I've got to say, in all honesty, was failed by this county council. He needed help, he didn't get it straight away, and his life, in the end, he lost his life because he never got the help and understanding as a child that he should have had. That anger and frustration for all the terrible things that happened to him was never dealt with. And so that anger and frustration came out later in life when he was in prison and somebody called him a paedophile. And he wasn't a paedophile, but he hit this man and he was put in prison and he was murdered in prison in an unprovoked attack. So I just want you all to understand, please, that we've got to do everything possible to look after our children. I've seen me down in Tipping Street before I was on the council, banging on the desk, saying, for God's sake, help me with my son, please. So I just want everybody to understand that we have to do everything we possibly can to look after our children. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got seat number 90. Does anybody else wish to speak before Councillor Marks? Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not sure if this is working or not.
No, it's that one.
Right, okay. Thank you very much, Chair. I won't seek to add too much to the comments that people have already made, but there are two things that I would highlight. The first is, I think it is important to note the work that this council does continually to improve our approach to our part in protecting children from cruelty and neglect. The leader of the council and myself sit on our Children's Improvement Board, which draws together all of the aspects of the work that we do with children. And I find that a particularly useful forum for bringing those subjects together and making sure that there aren't any gaps between them in terms of our approach. And I think that's important work. It's borne out in the children's transformation process that this council has been pushing forwards with over the last couple of years, which is about continually striving to improve the way that we approach these matters. I would just like to pay particular tribute to Mark Sutton, our Cabinet Member for Children's Services, and also to Mrs Helen Riley, the Director of our Children's Service, who've led that work with their excellent social work team. The second point was just to pick up on something that Councillor Parry mentioned, and just to re-emphasise it, which is that whilst we have our role to play in trying to make sure that children are safe, it is everybody's responsibility, and that safeguarding question that many of us might ask ourselves at some point in our lives, I'm not quite sure about what's happening with that child there, I have a worry, should I do something about that? The answer to that question is always yes. If you've asked the question, then refer it on, and we've heard from Councillor Atkins about the single point of access to that in Staffordshire, our safeguarding hub. So whether you are in a professional role or whether you are anybody else, if you're worried about a child, please do report it. You will be thanked for it. There is no criticism of being worried and it being nothing. Please do that. It's the best thing that we can all do to keep children safe. Thank you very much, Chair.
That is the microphone and button that is associated with your chair, so if you want to use it in future. Councillor Mark DeVille.
Chairman, thank you. Extremely powerful debate, Chairman, this morning. That the protection of our children is the single most important thing that we do in our everyday lives, Chairman. Not only as county councillors, but as grandparents, parents and citizens of this nation. It is encouraging to a degree, Chairman, to hear the leader speak of the intense importance that we place on this matter. It is reassuring to know that this county council places probably at the top of its list of objectives to protect our children from disgraceful neglect, such as we saw in this awful case. Chairman, our children just want to be loved, don't they? They want to be loved and cared for. And clearly, in the case of Arthur, this wasn't the case. I suppose a long time after Arthur's tragic death, a fairly short but significant and poignant message was placed on the screen at Millwall Football Club last Saturday when they played Birmingham City, who, of course, are Arthur's favourite team. Very, very short message which said that, Arthur, you are loved. And unfortunately, in Arthur's short life, he clearly wasn't loved. Chairman, extremely powerful debate. I agree and support totally Mr. Atkins and Mr. Parry's powerful comments that Whilst it's reassuring to know that we place this at the very top of our agenda of objectives, there's no room for complacency whatsoever, Chairman. And it's good to know that we, as a county council, have no complacency whatsoever with this critical matter. Thank you, Chairman, and thanks to all members for a very, very powerful and important debate.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm very new to the council. I spent 30 years in Staffordshire Police protecting our residents in Staffordshire, of which I'm very proud. And for the last 8 years, I've been working with vulnerable children in education, which again, I find absolutely very rewarding. So when the leader appointed me to the corporate parenting panel, I was absolutely elated to be part of that. At a meeting a few months ago when we were discussing social workers within Staffordshire, it was quite obvious to me that there was a lack of male social workers within our organisation, and I did question that, and they were saying that there was some difficulty in getting male people to become social workers. Now, working in education as I do, counsellor over there says that children want to be loved, but I find that a lot of the children that I work with need a role model, and I've been able to be that role model to them with the experience of life that I have and the work that I've done. So I think it is important that when we recruit, that we do try and recruit more male social workers, because they have a lot to give as well as our female, but we've got a lack of them, and I feel that that's important. My work in school, the children come in the morning. If you notice that a child always comes to school with dirty clothes, they're hungry, they're tired, what language do they start using? If they start using inappropriate words, that's usually a signal that something's not right at home. Are they bruised? Do they keep going to the toilet all the time? So it's all these signals that you become aware of, and I know that my colleagues in education work very hard with the police and social services, and as soon as we find any slight deviation from normal behaviour of our children, it is reported and it is followed up, and that's very important. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mark Sutton.
Cheers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you everybody that's taken the time to speak on this matter this morning. What happened to little Arthur was horrendous. I spent 30 years in the police. I've been the lead member for children and young people here in Staffordshire for the last 5.5 years. And I don't think I can recall in all that time such an evil event. Like many of you, I listened to the audio recording of little Arthur begging for food and love and only getting hate. There will be a serious case review and also now a national review, so I won't prejudge the outcome of those inquiries. Prejudge the outcome of those inquiries, sorry. Perhaps I can update you on some of the things that we are doing to strengthen our approach to safeguarding children here in Staffordshire. In Staffordshire, we have now concluded the transformation programme, and we have in place a restorative practice model based on a district footprint that the staff believe in, and I believe passionately, will improve the effectiveness of how we deal with children. It will see 31 more frontline social workers, 7 more SEND workers, 12 social workers assigned to the front door that do the initial assessment when calls and referrals come in, and 3 additional practitioners who can review cases and supervise frontline staff, and 24 extra family support workers working directly with children and families together in their homes. And we will also see a programme of social workers working directly in schools. All the staff have access to a case management system that updates daily to show each of their cases, if reviews are due, when the last visit was made, and when the next review and visit is required. And this replaces hundreds of previous databases and spreadsheets that were kept individually by staff. We are determined to ensure that the balance between time spent updating systems and time spent with families continues to move towards more time with families. In each district, There will be an opportunity for more partnership working with other agencies as well across the county council teams. But it is a challenge. Nationally, there is a massive shortage of social workers, as has been highlighted by other speakers, and a lack of people wanting to enter the profession. But we are doing here much better than many others, our neighbours. Some of our neighbours have a 40% vacancy rate. In Staffordshire, we have one of the best programmes in the region around newly qualified social workers. And part of the transformation, we've appointed and strengthened the principal social worker and their team. And it's a principal social worker that ensures that the practice throughout the service is good and is forever learning. There's been some reference to lockdown and visiting children. During lockdown, we worked together with schools to ensure that all vulnerable children, known to all partners as well as teachers, were still visited in person. In particular, those children who were not attending school. And schools were able to provide us with lists of whom they thought were vulnerable children that didn't meet the criteria to be on the Children's Services radar. Today and every day, hundreds of social workers and other professionals across Staffordshire will make difficult, critical decisions about children and their futures that none of us will know about. They make these decisions based on their professional judgment, and I tell you from personal experience that these are not easy decisions. We need social workers to know that when they make these difficult decisions, that this council has their back. And I hope I speak for everybody in saying it does. And I hope I speak on behalf of all members in thanking our social workers and other staff for the work they do to keep children safe. I'd also like to reassure members and the public listening about the safeguarding procedures we have in place in the county. The Safeguarding Children's Board is a tripartite partnership between Staffordshire County Council, the police and health that sets yearly priorities and seeks reassurance that the core functions of the board are being achieved. The annual report was scrutinised recently by the Safeguarding Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'll leave it for others, perhaps the chairman of that committee at some stage, to talk about that. I'm personally regularly updated on many individual safeguarding issues, as is the leader and the deputy leader. We've continued to maintain a monthly Children Improvement Board that myself, the Cabinet Member for Education, and send the leader and the deputy leader and the chair of Safeguarding Overview and Scrutiny attend. So I'm reassured that in Staffordshire we have a robust system in place around safeguarding, and our transformation will allow more time working with children and families. But we must remain vigilant and work tirelessly to protect and keep safe our vulnerable residents. We should never let our guard down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council Leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to Councillor Sutton for those words of reassurance about the processes we have in place as a council. But as Councillor Parry pointed out, it is the culture of caring that we need in our great village of Staffordshire, not just the processes of the local authority. There is a special place in hell for those people that bring harm to children. And we condemn as an authority unreservedly the actions of those people who harm children. I'd like to conclude briefly by just thanking once again our social workers and just saying to them, we have your backs. Thank you for everything you do on a daily basis. It is a hard job and we are very grateful.
Can I thank everybody for an excellent debate and the comments they've made? Thank you. We'll now return to the leader's statement. Item 1, Adult Learning Disability 2022, Community Offer. Update on learning disability residential services, directly provided by Staffordshire County Council. Councillor Colin Greatrix.
Thank you, Chairman. This is actually in my district ward, and I've been inside the building. It's very run down. It's actually in Hawthorne Close. There's a residential area directly opposite. And I welcome the investment because the fact that it's run down actually looks quite dismal from the outside, so the improvements are obviously recommended. And the report refers to profound and multiple learning disabilities being best cared for in an environment that's conducive. One of the things that will be of advantage to the users of the site was that they will have each other. They'll have a bit of company, and that's very valuable in terms of those with profound learning difficulties, to have that comfort that there's somebody else in the building. So I welcome the investment.
Councillor Julia Jessel.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for those comments that have been made. This is indeed a good piece of news and reaffirms this Council's commitment to investing in the facilities and the services that it provides to these vulnerable people. I wouldn't say that the building is run down. The staff there do a brilliant job, but I'm the first to admit that it is what I will call tired. And as we all know, the facilities and standards of accommodation that people expect, quite rightly nowadays, is somewhat different from those in the 70s when the building was erected. So this development will invest in this building. It will, above everything else, keep those residents together. Many of them have lived together for a long, long time. And whilst the CQC will now say that units of 6 is the ideal size, we believed, working with those residents, with their carers and families, the thing that was of paramount importance to them was that these people stayed together in their well-established community. So we've worked hard to achieve that. And with this development, they will have the facilities they need, ensuite facilities that actually will improve infection control, which we've learnt over the last 2 years. Has been extremely important. The development will, over a period of 5 years, save just short of £1 million because it's be a far more energy efficient building, and also it will enable us to release part of the site which can then be sold for redevelopment. So this is really good news. There's a hard side to it. It saves us money, but there is a good, really good side to it, which is we're improving the facilities and services we provide, and above all, keeping these residents together, which I believe, and obviously the comment has been made, is really important. Thank you, Chairman.
Item 2, Climate Change Annual Report and Climate Action Plan. Councillor Syed Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to also extend my thanks to Councillor Simon Tagg and the officers who helped to organize this recent event, which was an eye-opener for us. Mr. Chairman, all roads lead to home. So, and emissions, tackling emissions from the buildings could be a huge potentials for tackling the climate change. And there is a significant issue regarding the existing gas boilers at the homes. So if we want to tackle these carbon emissions from the local normal residents in our neighborhood or so, the proposal of changing this gas boiler to the electric powered pumped, which can be powered by the local wind power. Then there is significant cost implications there as well. Local residents, they just cannot afford another extra £18,000 to adjust this one, because one of the preconditions is to insulate the house properly. So I would like the council to emphasize this issue as well, whenever, if they have any forum or anything with the central government or issues. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult to sell this one to the residents, that you have to do it, because people don't have the means to adopt this one. And at the same token, Mr. Chairman, there are some issues we can consider, like tree plantations and changing the existing street lights to the LED and others as well. Everything counts. However, we need to watch our space as well. And it's always very easy to criticize the government or anybody at all. They are not doing anything. For recent instance in the COP26 conference, and we can see thousands and hundreds of people were protesting or something. And I do want to, I also believe in peaceful protest, and I relish to attend there as well. But the world's most powerful carbon emitters is China, India, United States, even Iran. I would like to see those protesters, the same protester, to do the same protest in Tiananmen Square, Azadi Gate, or Delhi Gate, or somewhere else as well. We will do our best to hear, but also we cannot tolerate or we cannot accept any half-witted effort. I do feel really confused, and I don't want to say the word angry, but kind of, when I see the Insulate Britain was blocking the road, and they were blocking a lorry who was supplying the insulation material to the houses. This sort of half-witted things is not helpful at all. And every indications, Mr. Chairman, implies that to achieve the net zero target by 2050 is nearly impossible. However, we want to be motivated by hope, rather fear. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mrs. Tina Clements.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly want to remind this council and the cabinet member to ensure that we look in-house towards our vehicles especially, and that includes yours at the moment, as we move towards EV and other ways of fuel. And also when we are tendering for contracts, that we look at their green agenda too, and to ensure that they can work with us the best way they can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. I simply want to ask how we will be, how we will progress against the proposed timelines for action. So, what are we going to do to make sure that we're monitoring, measuring, and reporting progress? Because otherwise, the timelines will mean nothing unless we can have that reported in a way that all members can see what progress or lack of progress we're making. And how too will the County Council ensure that its response to climate change is joined up right across the County Council? Because I get the feeling that not all directorates are pulling in quite the same direction so passionately. It's really vital that we have some sort of idea of how these timelines are going to be met and how then we can progress in terms of our county's contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Winnington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I considered lucky enough to go along to a conference that was held for 2 days by the University of Birmingham, and that was around the future of trees, and I think trees have been mentioned 2 or 3 times already, as part of the answer heading towards net zero by 2050. Now, I think we've established that there's a green thread that needs to go all the way through County Council, whatever directorate it is, and also with residents as well. But the trees one for me was quite interesting. So it's the enormity of it. The government's committed to 30,000 hectares of land for forestry for the next 30 years. That equates to 2.3 billion trees. So in 30 years' time, the UK will look considerably different than it does at the moment. In terms of the trees itself, it's not a simple thing, just planting a tree is the very first bit. Looking after the trees thereafter is quite a challenge. And the type of trees. Now, one thing I found was quite interesting was we've got very few native species. And if you actually think there's elm, oak and whatever else, but very few northern species. And that is because the glaciers wiped out all of the vegetation years ago. So this is not a new thing. And really interesting. The other problem is the more trees you put in, the more diseases you get. So you can get Dutch elm disease we've heard of, acute oak decline and sudden death, ash dieback, and if you look in the fields, a lot of ash trees are now dying. So it's not a simple thing. And my plea really is that as a public sector, as a knowledge sector, the universities are interested now, and as a business sector, we all work together to achieve this quite a challenged target as we go forwards. And I'm really pleased that the County Council's already started with its strategy and with different initiatives already. So thank you, Chairman.
Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I would expect that every single member of this council has read in detail the Climate Change Annual Report. It's a very interesting document, and I would particularly like to commend the Cabinet member for the work that's been put in and the progress that's been made in a comparatively short space of time. And I particularly draw members to a paragraph in the foreword to this document by Simon Tagg, which reads, "Staffordshire County Council has a key role to play in tackling climate change by reducing the emissions from our services, working with others to lower emissions, and helping to create a county which is more resilient to climate change." Mr. Chairman, if I can commend what we have achieved so far, but then ask the question, where next? And I think that paragraph emphasises the fact that we as a council are probably in this county a greater influence on other organisations, other councils, than anyone else. So I think it's vital that we're going forward, we look to how we use that influence and how effectively we can be in doing something so that our community can feel that every individual is making a contribution to what we need to do as far as climate change is concerned. So that, Chairman, brings me to the role of members. Every single member of this council, and I would also add every officer, it's no good us turning round to our Cabinet member and saying what a good job you're doing and how hard you're working. We need, as members, to have a strong view in what we're doing in representing our local communities and working together with how we can deliver a much more effective way that Staffordshire is meeting its objectives. We can't just sit back and let it happen. We've got to be there, vigorous in the forefront of what we need to do. We're elected to do a job, and we need, as members, every single one of us, to do that job. We've listened earlier on to the tragic circumstances regarding child abuse, but the long-term objective, the lives of all of our children and grandchildren, is affected by what we as members are going to do today. I would add, if we're to have our grandchildren say, well, Grandpa was in the council. What did he do? And I think we need all of us to look back and say what we did. And as we hand on to other people, that we leave a significant contribution behind for the things which we have done. So, Chairman, one would suggest to the leader and the cabinet, what are the next steps that we as members need to take? I think that the climate change plan does an excellent job in what this council can directly do. But if we're looking at what we ought to be doing to go further, then I think it's extremely important that we look at how we're going to achieve sustainable communities. There are so many opportunities that are coming forward that the council doesn't have to put money in, but it can attract funding from elsewhere. If we start looking at power generation, then in the leader's own division, we have an organisation that's got a planning commission, which I'm not sure whether it's been determined or not yet, but it will provide sufficient solar energy to power both his division and mine. And I think that's a direction that we need to be looking at. Chairman, very, very quickly, I think we need to be looking at housing, we need to be looking at transport, and I think particularly, as the last point that I would make, is that we need to be looking at public opinion. I think our community, in something which is so important, want the opportunity to be able to say to their local members, this is what we think. And I think we need to do that more effectively. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I would just like to thank Councillor Jessel, who originally led on the climate change work that's being done for this authority, and then on to Councillor Tagg, who has taken on that role and that responsibility. I welcome the comments that have been made from other members here today who talk about climate change, and they're absolutely right. Climate change is everyone's responsibility. What I will say is that yesterday the Sustainability Board met, led by Councillor Tagg, where all boroughs and districts feeding through their portfolio holders into a wider group, which then enables that joined up working and that joined up thinking so that we can all go in the right direction. Some of those key areas of focus for both us as an authority and other members as well is to reduce emissions from all of our own activities, to work in partnership with government, elected bodies and elected members, partners and residents across the county to take action that contributes to carbon neutrality and sustainable development within communities and our natural environment. And also to mitigate and adapt to climate change, because that is clearly a big issue for us. And to continue to implement all of our own green recovery objectives. But I have to say that the work of the Sustainability Board is in its infancy, but I look forward to the work that is being done on there. We have some real goals, obviously some real issues going forward as well. But I am keen and hopeful that we will deliver what we need to do to make sure that obviously we are a green and healthier county for our children going forward. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mark DeVille.
Chairman, very many thanks. Councillor Mrs. Charlotte Atkins makes a really good point, Chairman, about the measurement against this strategy, the measurement of delivery against timelines. And you're absolutely right, this is critical. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it, Chairman. So it's a very, very good point that I know Mrs. Atkins, Councillor Tagg absolutely takes on board. He well knows the importance of delivery, as does the previous holder of the portfolio, Mrs. Jessel. Know only too well that it's time, absolutely time to deliver, because time's ticking on. And we had the same really good discussion at Staffordshire Moorlands last night about this, about delivering the ambitious plans that we have and about the importance of delivery. And, Chairman, Mr. David Smith absolutely nailed it. It's all of our responsibility. It's not just Simon Tagg and the leader of this council and the cabinet. It's all of our responsibility, collective responsibility, to deliver climate change for children, grandchildren, future generations. We've got an opportunity now to do this, and we must take it. And our plans are very, very ambitious. It's the responsibility of all members, all staff, and it'll only be delivered, Chairman, working in partnership. And I'm really pleased that the Sustainability Board has started work and making good progress. And we also mentioned last night, Councillor Atkins, you know, the importance of getting district councils involved, town and parish councils involved. Chairman, it's all of our collective responsibility, isn't it? But we do fully understand the importance of delivery against timelines, Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. Councillor Dr. Johnny McMahon.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to very briefly touch on some of Councillor Hussein's remarks. The first is about keeping houses warmer and the residential piece. There is a competitive grant that is issued by the government. There's been 4 so far, and we've been successful in 3 of them. That's only just scratching the surface, I grant you that. But every time these come up, we will pursue them with vigour. It helps fuel poverty, and it helps the environment, and it's a good all-round. And I agree entirely. There was a piece in a broadsheet just after COP26, and the title was "The Real Enemy is Despair," and we are an administration of hope. And being positive, and we will do our level best to do what we can to address this issue. And I agree entirely with Councillor Winnington's point about it has to be a multi-department approach, and public health and the green issue and climate change go hand in glove. And just to mention 2 is active transport and air pollution, and we will pursue them together. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. I was lucky enough to go up to Keele University at a conference that they held where COP26 was ongoing, and listened to talks on what's actually going on within the county, within Staffordshire. And it comes on from what David Smith was going on about behaviour change. And listening to the people who were talking, I thought one of the things is that we are going to have to change the behaviour that we have as individuals. There's some of the easy solutions that we've got to insulation. There's Woolco up at Stone who are using wool, which nobody wants. It costs more to shear a sheep than it does the actual thing, because we wear clothes that are made out of plastic, nylon, carbons. I hope they're wool. I hope they're wool. I hope they're wool, because the fibres in your clothes are one of the biggest pollutants in the waterways that we've ever got. You put them in the washing machine. Have you ever thought where the plastic fibres go? Into the sewers and into the seas and the rivers, which I'm just monitoring at the moment because somebody's pumping runoff out of Ashbourne and various other places into the River Dove, and we've got a horrendous flood going on, which will soon be down at Burton in about 7 or 8 hours' time. These are the effects of climate change, and I'm pleased to see that agriculture are signing up to net zero in 2040, not 2050, because we can do an awful lot through breeding, work and everything else to enact that. But one of some of the tools that we're using is focusing in on the biggest carbon creators within our industry and the biggest carbon the ways of getting carbon back into the soil. And there is, I think I've shared it with some of you, the Rural Services Network. At the some of these emails we get, you know, they're massive, but right at the bottom was a tiny little link to a carbon impact calculator that Exeter University have used. And I used it on my parish councils. It goes down to a parish council consumption, individual and territorial. And I found it really fascinating because little villages like Stramshall and Bramshall, personal consumption's quite high. It's about 23 when the average is about 18. But because the A50 runs through it, when that transport is put in, it's even higher. It's about 60 tonnes. Mark Winnington's parish of Ranton, individually, is about 20, but on territorial, 323 tonnes per individual because of a waste plant on the industrial site out in the countryside. But the worst one that I came across, I think it's in Mike Worthington's, is Waterhouses. The personal consumption there is 20 tonnes. On territorial grounds, 1,360 tonnes per person because of the cement plant there. So there are certain industries that we can have some quick wins on carbon sequestration and reduction. And listening to the Keel talk, the cement plant in Wrexham, there are plans there to use a pipeline to put the carbon that plant generates into a disused gas well just off the shores of Liverpool and put it under sea. So the behavioural change is going to affect us, if not in the way that we work on a day-to-day basis, but certainly in our pockets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Charlotte Atkins, the progress against timelines is vital, not just internally, but because our residents demand it. Our target of net zero by 2050 is realistic and achievable, but the most important thing is to make steady, clear, conspicuous progress towards net zero over a period of time. The timeline and the date is arbitrary. What we've got to do is just keep working hard to get there. If Councillor Tagg were here, he would be saying he has been hassling all portfolio holders every time they speak about making sure that they've got a green thread running through everything they do. He is very, very diligent in the work that he is doing. Unfortunately, the climate seems to have got to him because he's got a cold this morning and can't be here himself. The climate change members event was reasonably well attended. I was delighted to see quite a few of us here really getting into the agenda. But the green thread that was referred to running through Staffordshire County Council doesn't just have to be Staffordshire County Council. It has to be throughout the county in everything we do. The Sustainability Board that was referred to by Councillor Price has just got going, and I think that across public authorities across the county we'll be able to get on board with that and start moving forward. There are a number of significant projects and proposals that Councillor Tagg is working on, and I know that Councillor Conor Wildman is also, through his overview work, looking forward to those sort of other opportunities that might present themselves that this authority could be picking up in the future. So there's a lot to go at. It's an exciting time on the climate change agenda. We're getting on with it, and I'm looking forward to being able to report progress in the not too distant future, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 3. Formal report of a local government and social care ombudsman. Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. What lessons have we learned from this case? What are the wider implications for post-16 travel, for SEND and indeed for other students? And what changes are being implemented as a result of this case? Thank you.
Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. This is obviously an Ombudsman review around one particular case where we felt that the post-16 child wasn't entitled to transport. However, due to the nature of the SEND and disabilities and the journey time, it was felt that it was only fair that we did put this transport in place, and rightly so as well. We weren't fully aware of the facts and this wasn't investigated properly. Going forward, that has now changed. We have another roughly 50 cases around transport applications historically where SEND and special educational needs and disabilities are involved, and we are looking through all of those cases historically as well, just to make sure that we've got those decisions right. And going forward as well, we will make sure that we change the way that we look at these and make sure that more in-depth work has been in place. We got this wrong. We realised we got this wrong. We put our hands up, and we've used it as a learning exercise, and this will also help us improve the way that we help these children with transport going forward in the future. So I am confident that this particular type of case should not occur again. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4, impact of COVID-19 on Staffordshire County Council communities, economic organisation recovery progress, update October 2021 and the way forward. Councillor Saeed Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I just cannot resist my temptation to applaud. I would like to thank all our dedicated frontline staff, officers, and councillors and residents for their dedications and hard work in this unprecedented crisis. Yesterday, I went to visit a family who lost their first son, eldest son, because of the COVID. And I lost some of my relatives in London, Liverpool, and Sunderland, but we were not allowed to attend in their funeral. Mr. Chairman, I would like to share my dismay and concerns with the recent revelations regarding the number 10's Christmas party or whatever it is. It was not acceptable at all. And however, whatever happens, rest assured, we will carry on whatever it takes to save lives and keep our community safer.
Thank you. Mrs. Schultz-Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. The impact of COVID on mental health has been really very severe for many people. So it's devastating that around 60 clients who have been using Leek's Nivden Community Mental Health Project, that the service will no longer be available to them after 6 weeks. Now, many of those clients have been referred to Rethink's John Hall Garden, also in Leek, but just yesterday, they were told that this will close in March next year, because the County Council and the CCGs have stopped funding. So great Christmas present for those clients. Now, no details have been given of any other services going to take that place, leaving them in dangerous limbo. These projects, ticked all the boxes. They offered open-air activity, sense of community, close to nature, supportive staff. So it's not surprising that these clients now feel absolutely abandoned. It seems to me that this is not the way to help the community recover from COVID. If we really believe in mental health and not suggesting that people should go into acute care, we should be bolstering community projects like this, not letting them wither on the vine, or to withdraw funding without making it clear to clients what is going to take their place. It's not as if there's lots of community projects out there. I mean, luckily we've got one voluntary one called Borderland Voices, but they can't take on 60 clients. So this is really worrying. We recognise that people's mental health has really taken a battering, over the lockdowns, but not just the lockdowns, the greater isolation that people have felt, and now with the new variant, more people will be getting into distress. So I just think that the County Council, working with the CCGs and with combined healthcare, really have to step up to the plate to look at mental health. I'm just talking about my patch, but this will be replicated around the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our endeavour to put on record the events that have taken place up to now. Clearly the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic and the Omicron variant is evolving, and I'll leave that to Councillor McMahon to talk to later. I agree with Councillor Atkins about people's mental health. It is troubling the impact of COVID on people's mental health, and we will look into the situation she's described in the Moorlands. I would say that the way that primary care is delivering some of its help for people with mental health problems is evolving. Community prescribing is becoming more of a feature in primary care, and I think that's a good thing. How it's delivered, though, is a matter that we'll have to discuss with the Clinical Commissioning Group and its successor organisation over the next few weeks and months. What goes on in other places is not a matter for me, and it's not a matter for this authority. What we are in the business of doing is making sure that we do the right thing ourselves and for our residents during the course of COVID-19. So let's just put to one side what is alleged to have happened at number 10 Downing Street, and let's just focus on making sure that people across Staffordshire are safe and well as this pandemic evolves, and we continue to fight it as hard as we possibly can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Item 5, Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 2, 2021-2022. Okay, no speakers, so we'll move on. Item 6, Nexus Trading Services Limited, Annual Report 2020-21. Councillor Mark DeVille.
Chairman, thank you. I'll be extremely brief, Chairman. As it indicates in the report, we saw a 60% growth in business last year within Nexus. That, of course, is important, but, Chairman, it's not nearly as important as the efforts that were put in by our people. You know, the business that Nexus is in, the business of looking after some of the most vulnerable people in our county. It's not about buildings, it's not about infrastructure, it's all about people. And if I may, Chairman, I'd like to thank all of our employees within Nexus, all 400 of them, for the way, A, that they stepped up to the plate in massively challenging circumstances, and B, the fact that everything, literally everything that was thrown at our staff, you know, the differentiation, the movement into testing, and we participated in over 100,000 tests within the county, COVID tests. And I'd like to put on record, please, Chairman, our thanks to the dedicated people who've done a tremendous job in the most challenging of circumstances. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Winnington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just following on from what Mark's just said, we're both voluntary non-executive directors of the Nexus Care Limit. This is an arm's length company, which is your company, because it's an arm's length from Staffordshire County Council. We've got 414 staff, an annual turnover of 6.25 million, heading up for 10 million next year. And what for me is quite amazing, and I still find it hard to believe, is we started this concept, and John Trador was involved at the very start. We started this concept in 2017, so we've gone from zero to a £10 million turnover next year, possibly. The company itself was set up to help with reablement, getting elderly people in particular back from hospital, back home to sort of free the pressure on the health service. It's then moved on to home care, lateral flow testing, as Mark's just said, well over 100,000 tests done by the company, and just 2 new enterprises that are just starting in terms of residential care homes. So this is important, and taking the load off the health service and social care within the county, so it's incredibly important. But as Mark says, it's not mine or Mark's. We're there as directors to make sure that it moves smoothly, but it's the staff, it's the executive staff, And it's the people on the street, the ladies and gentlemen that actually go out and do these jobs and visit people, particularly important when you get to this time of year when it's cold and wet and having to travel in the snow in moorlands. They do an awful lot. Now, the care sector, like every other sector, is suffering with staff retention. And I think further on in the leader statement, there is a grant that's been given to Staffordshire. And I know that with Nexus, they've got £109,000 worth of that grant to try and retain and attract people to what is always traditionally been a quiet service no one's known about, but it's becoming more and more important to all of us and to all of our residents. It really is important that we look after our elder people. And some of those staff retention issues are like winter essentials, making sure that they've got gloves, they've got window scrapers, warm clothing, just stuff that makes it help. It's easy for the people that work for us. So really, all I'm saying is, and echoing what Mark said, the staff at Nexus, the staff at other care companies, because we're only one of many companies, actually get recognition because they are really our unsung heroes. And I personally think they do a fantastic job. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman. And just on that point that Councillor Winnington raised this morning, I have a small business within the town and I got to work a little earlier this morning just to make sure I was prepared for today's meeting and any awkward questions that are normally thrown at me. And I get a knock on the door just before we open and there's a lady stood there. She says, "Oh, I'm from the local library, I'm a volunteer. However, I'm delivering lateral flow kits for and on behalf of Nexus." So that is a prime example of what you would call a unsung hero doing voluntary work to support Nexus and residents and businesses as well to keep us going and open. And it was quite useful because I'd run out of lateral flow tests, so she must have known and was psychic. But I just want to pay tribute to those volunteers as well that are doing that work and making sure that businesses can continue to operate and we feel supported too. So well done to everybody involved.
Thank you. Item 7, Supplementary Capital Programme for Schools 2021-22. Councillor David Smith.
Chairman, only banging on my usual climate change issues. I see that there are two items in there, planned maintenance, sustainability and climate change. I trust that money is going to some way look at the possibilities of schools becoming self-sustainable and produce sufficient energy to be able to power their own requirement without needing to go into the national grid. Thank you, John.
Councillor Jonathan Price.
Yeah, apologies, you've got me again. I'd like to say a few words on this because this is a really good news story for this county and then follow on with the comments that have just been made. So Staffordshire is a great place to live, work and invest, where most people enjoy a good quality of life. There are over 400 schools and academies providing education for around 120,000 primary, middle and secondary pupils. Every Staffordshire child deserves the best education and to leave school or college with the learning and skills they need to succeed in future education or their workplace. A strong economy relies on high-performing education system to produce the workforce of the future and young people with the right skills, attitude and ambition to meet the needs of our employees or to start one of their own businesses. The Department for Education have committed 1.8 billion, that's an increase of 300 million in 21-22 for maintaining and improving the school estate. The Department for Education has introduced a new system to allocate funding that they believe more accurately reflects condition needs and is simpler for us and others to understand. School condition funding is for maintaining and improving the condition of the school estates and includes allocation for individual institutions through devolved formula capital. And these are awarded directly to schools, and allocations to bodies responsible for managing capital funding through the direct school condition allocations. Staffordshire County Council is currently responsible for around 128 maintained schools, As a result of the increase, we have received a schools conditions allocations of £9.5 million, which is the highest allocation we've had since 2015-16. When we were responsible for just 300 maintained schools. This is a one-year allocation, but given that it is the first year of a new methodology, it is hopeful that the future funding will be calculated in a very similar way. This additional money will be used to improve education standards by addressing highest priority condition issues, ensuring schools are warm, safe and dry through the planned maintenance programme. And then we talk about the green thread, and as Councillor White mentioned earlier, the green thread through everything we do, and this money will be put towards climate change and sustainability matters within our schools. Deliver projects that make a difference to the school environment that are not condition driven, but will have a significant impact through the priority cabinet projects portfolio. And to refurbish toilet facilities that are designed and fitted out to a standard that discourages antisocial behaviour and vandalism. And I'd like to remind members as well that we have the new all-through school being built, which starts construction in Rugeley at the beginning of next year, and that will be a carbon neutral school, and we'll be able to learn some lessons through that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, Branston Locks Primary, proposed 2 FE and Associates Section 106 contributions, Wave School. Councillor Philip White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So this, yes, the dodgy microphone. So this development straddles my division and Councillor Julia Jessel's, and I just wanted to welcome the County Council's contribution to making sure that this school is going to be delivered. Branston Locks is an enormous extension to Burton-on-Trent. It's 2,500 new homes, plus just about 20 hectares of employment land. There are going to be a lot of families living there in the next few years with young children who need to be educated. There's already a high school, the John Taylor Free School, which opened its doors a few years ago, which is thriving, and it will be great to have this alongside it. The one other thing, though, that I do just want to get on the record here, and I'll encourage my Cabinet colleagues to comment on it, is there is a need for healthcare provision on the site, primary healthcare, and there does seem to have been a bit of a lack of enthusiasm in some quarters to engage with getting that primary healthcare provision locally for those 2,500 households. I know that it's something that this County Council considers to be important, so I just ask that we do everything we can to encourage colleagues in other parts of the primary healthcare economy to focus on getting some provision directly on that site, and in a part of Burton where actually GP provision is a little bit hard to come by as it is. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to reinforce the comments made by Councillor Philip White. This is really good news. It's an area of Burton-on-Trent that is growing very fast. The Branston Locks, plus what's called land south of Branston and developments off Forest Road, I think total over 3,500 homes. They're selling quickly. It's a really popular place to live with a full range of properties. It's absolutely essential that we get the infrastructure in, and I think my colleague has mentioned the John Taylor Free School. I have to declare I am a trustee on the board of that school. But with that school and primary care provision, it will ensure that the infrastructure is in there to give the children on those new housing estates quality education, which is vital to them. So it is really good news. There is other infrastructure that we need to make sure is in place, not least healthcare provision and also highway infrastructure. But this is really good news, very welcome, and it will ensure that hopefully the population who use those schools will walk there.
Thank you. Item 8, Branston Locks Primary. Sorry, I've just done that one. Item 9, Staffordshire Bus Strategy, Bus Service Improvement Plan. Your name's come up on the screen. Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of quick words as well on the Branston locks, so apologies. Firstly, you're absolutely right around developers. Obviously, we're keen to have homes built for...
Excuse me, Councillor, that item has now been concluded. We're on item 9 now.
Thank you, Chairman. I had pressed the button before you'd finished, but okay.
We are now on item 9. It's procedures. There's nothing I can do about it. We're on item 9, Staffordshire Bus Strategy, Bus Service Improvement Plan. Councillor David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Those of us that came into the council this morning from the bottom end of the main road here will have seen that there were at least 2 buses there with their engines running. I happened to pop out again 10 minutes later and they were still there with their engines running and nobody sitting there. I also wished to ask the Cabinet member if he would emphasise to bus companies that engines should be turned off. And I'd be particularly pleased if he would look at buses that come in from other areas that are not necessarily Staffordshire-based companies. I have a particular one that I would be grateful if he would look at is the bus service which goes into Stonnell, where it has a waiting period in Stonnell where it sits for 10 minutes with its engine running. I think that if we are looking at the points we've raised earlier on climate change, for that to be totally ignored, I know we advise bus companies, but bus companies need to be much more vigorous about the way they implement that. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mrs Charlotte Atkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome this bus service improvement plan because a reliable bus service is absolutely vital to our communities. Not everybody drives, not everybody wants to drive, not everyone's capable of driving. So I'm pleased to see this, but I'm also pleased to see that under the Climate Change Action Plan, that the County Council is to work with local bus operators to agree a transition plan to low-emission buses. That's good news. But will the County Council also press bus operators to install seatbelts in all buses used by pupils travelling to school? I was shocked that a loophole was being used to avoid the need for seatbelts on buses used by school children, despite the fact that these buses travel at up to 60 miles an hour. And I think we have a duty to keep our young people safe and that we should urge them to have seatbelts on those buses. I remember, 25 years ago, as a chair of governors, raising the issue of a bus that didn't have seatbelts, which was going to be used by the school I was chair of governors of. And I was shocked then, and it seems to me 25 years on that we still have buses that don't have seatbelts when buses are travelling in rural areas at up to 60 miles an hour is totally unacceptable, and we must make sure that our children are safe and that those seatbelts are installed and used. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Lunder.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here really just to report back on what's been happening at the Prosperous Committee as the Vice Chair. I'm running a small workshop which will be happening on the 21st of January, and the comments that have been made by Councillor Smith and Councillor Atkins will be welcomed into that workshop. So the Bus Services Improvement Plan has been passed and was passed by this Council back in October. That's been put forward to the government and hopefully we'll get some of the funding forward. I think we applied for about £113 million. How we now look at that and how we now look at the tactical side of things and put that into practice, and also how do we write up a document which we need to do over the coming months, which I think needs to be presented to Prosperous in March. I'm really asking for members here today to work with the members of the Prosperous Committee. Let us know any comments, details, or anything else that you have in your mind. I know David's on the committee, so he'll be hopefully within the workshop. So I'm just asking all members really to get involved with that. The green energy element of it as well, the battery supplies and everything like that, hydrogen cell, all that stuff, will all come into the whole workshop. Details and everything else. Suppliers and providers will be there, and operators. So it will be a really good time to get all our thoughts together and to produce a really good document about how we can, as I say, I think we mentioned this last night, get the job done. Don't just talk about it. Let's try and get some good action into the plan, and let's go forward to look at what we can do, both in rural and urban areas within the county. So I please ask members to let us all know within the Prosperous Committee. I think I've said that enough now, Chair, so I'll shut up. Thank you.
Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the engines running, obviously we don't run bus services. We can make recommendations, and we do make strong recommendations that buses switch their engines off when they're not moving. And we do that not only with the normal bus services, but also especially with the travelling to and from schools. As part of the BCIP, and members will be aware that I've been working with the bus companies to look at low emission buses. Part of this is to change some of the exhausts on certain ones, which they're doing in Stoke-on-Trent at this moment. And part of it is to look at future types of buses, both electric and hydrogen. So that will depend on how much money that we will get from the BCIP to what we will be able to do. But as I've said previously, some of the costs indicative of these type of vehicles at the moment are prohibitive. When it comes to seat belts, all new vehicles for seat belts for children travelling to school, all new vehicles travelling to and from schools, for schools, have seat belts. That's exactly what they will have, and they are. When students are using normal buses, then they do not have seat belts, and that is the normal buses, and that's the dispensation that they have, and that's a legal issue there. But that unfortunately, for anything that where we're talking, where it is a travel to school, they have seat belts. You're quite right with the tactical BCIP plan. That is going to change dependent on the amount of money that we get. We have gone ambitious. We've gone for 113 million. This is really to make it so that we can have a better travel, better experience, and an increased offer for our communities. Because that's what we're all about in this cabinet, looking after our communities. So that will depend on the money, and when it comes to it, then obviously we will then depend on how much we get to what parts of that plan we will be able to introduce. But that again, we'll be working with the bus companies. I will reiterate it, we don't run bus companies. Finally, with the climate change initiatives, we are trying our best, and we've done that, but as I've also said previously in the council, the actual infrastructure out there does not allow for electric buses at this present time. That is a huge amount of change, a huge amount of cost, and would also cause a huge amount of disruption. I actually personally think the hydrogen bus route is probably the way to go forward, and this is going to be a lot more sustainable, but producing the hydrogen is also going to be an issue. So that's something that I'm actually looking at with our depots to see if that will be possible. But I just want to assure the council that we are looking at both the climate change and the safety issues at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10, Household Support Fund. Councillor Mark Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I can just take the opportunity to update members on how the Household Support Fund is progressing. So we have issued over 25,000 vouchers to parents of children with entitled to free school meals across schools and early year settings. And I'd like to thank the schools and the early year settings that have helped us to be able to do that, and will continue to do that during the February and April periods as well. Through this fund, we have also targeted children currently receiving universal free school meals who would be entitled to benefit-related free school meals, and early years children who received funding from the Think 2 and early years premium pupil premium. We have also targeted 200 additional families of children who are identified through financial exclusion, who are not included in the above. This includes families of eligible children accessing alternative education, families of eligible children in independent education settings, and families of children aged 0 to 2. The referral-based support went live on the 1st of December, and so far we have received over 1,200 applications from families across Staffordshire. It appears that by word of mouth is helping to spread the message about this support. And he's seeing over 36,000 spent already, with over 300 claims processed. We are working with the care leavers team to ensure that all care leavers have access to the household support fund this winter, and we anticipate distributing around 450 packages of support. The Winter Warmth project has been up and running since the 1st of December and has targeted referrals for over 800 residents. The council tax refund is being discussed with districts and boroughs to ensure that this can be targeted at the residents locally who are most in need. And it appears that the amount allocated will unfortunately only support a minority of the arrears, but will provide welcome relief for those most in need. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Saeed Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to welcome this household support fund as well, which is a very crucial, especially to tackle the holiday hungers as well. And when it's sending the vouchers, which is exactly the way forward to do these things. Can I just also mention that there is an element of in-work poverty. It's not just parents are not working or reluctant to work. And the poverty we can see, especially the area I represent, and I'm sure my fellow councillor Arshad Afsar as well. So we can see them, both parents are working, but still they are struggling to make their ends meet. Can I ask the cabinet member that how much money does the council intend to spend on families from this fund? And I mean, what more can be done to tackle this kind of poverty? I mean, when kids are hungry and going to the school, they cannot concentrate on their lessons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Mark Sutton for all the work that he's doing with the fund. I'll get an answer to you about the precise figures, Councillor Hussain, in writing, if that's convenient. But I think I just want to draw your attention to the work of the wider council, improving the quality of jobs that we are striving to achieve across Staffordshire, because allowing people to fall into a trap of need is not what we want. What we're trying to do through Councillor Philip White's portfolio is just lift the boat, okay? Lift the tide so that everybody has a good quality job that pays well, so that people can lift themselves out of the poverty that he has described. So I think rather conveniently there's an item next but one, Mr. Chairman, where Councillor White will be referring to that.
Thank you. Item 11, half-yearly Treasury Management Report for the period ending 3rd of September 2021. Councillor Ian Parry.
Thank you, Chairman. At the moment you've all been waiting for. There's a statutory requirement on the Council to report to Council our Treasury management. And for newer members, you may wonder what that is and why we have it, and why we need to report it in this way, because it hasn't always been like this. But I'm sure you all remember the Icelandic bank collapse, over a decade ago now, that sucked in quite a few local authorities who lent on what seemed to be attractive interest rates, and there was some failure from local authorities in terms of getting their money back through those collapses. So since then, there have been much stricter controls on what local authorities can do with their cash balances. This is therefore a report about how the Council does its banking. The Council receives cash from all sorts of sources, potentially government sources, council tax, etc., etc. And we use that cash to fund the operation of the county council, to provide those services, etc. So cash balance is not a great chunk of money for us to spend how we like. There is operational running costs, there are service delivery costs, and there are investment costs, and there are loan repayment costs that the council has to meet. But it does mean that large amounts of cash sit within our council balances and are for some period unused. So therefore the council is prudent about lending out that cash for a return whilst it maintains a certain level of liquidity should we need to access cash to fund our operation or to invest. What we've done as a county council, and we were amongst the first to do this, and it was quite an innovative approach, was that instead of borrowing money to fund short-term capital requirements, we used our cash. That therefore saves us money between the differential between the cost of borrowing and the cost of lending. And at the time when interest rates are low, there is a benefit to that. In effect, it means that we make a profit, if you like, on not borrowing, but using cash. And at the moment, that's around £800,000 a year, which is a useful sum, saving to the taxpayer in our Treasury management. This is not me or the leader or the deputy leader or the cabinet deciding on any of this. It's regulated and it's also managed internally by our Treasury Management Panel, which is chaired by the County Treasurer, Mr Salmon, and other members of his staff, and is advised by an external specialist financial advisor business to them. So it's outside our hands, if you like, so we don't dabble in investing, but it is controlled and managed by experts and within strict regulation. This year, we've seen quite a significant increase in cash that flows in and out of the council, simply because there's been additional funding for COVID. If you recall, there's around £20 million worth of extra money came into the council to fund some of those things that we were delivering during the COVID peak of the pandemic. There's also been additional funding to the LEP, and of course this council is the banker for the LEP. We're also the banker for parts of the Midland Engine and parts of the Treasury Valley project. So there's been some significant increase, in almost doubling of increase of cash that comes into the council that we're having to manage. So we're having to increase the limits that we would normally set for some of that lending to be put externally, just to ensure that we're not holding cash and it doesn't become unprofitable. The key thing to bear in mind is the return of our money is more important than the return on our money. So we're not looking for high returns, we're looking for security and liquidity. And that means AAA, Treasury-backed kind of investments, secure, safe banking, and ensure that we've got the best from it. But on top of that, we've done some clever things like using cash, as I said, instead of borrowing. And we've also lent to other local authorities, which we consider to be safe lending as well. So a safe and secure strategy from our Treasury management. I thought it was worth referencing that simply because two things. For new members, it might be something that's odd or peculiar or a bit strange. And also that this year there's been a difference because there's been a significant increase in the cash that comes into the council. I bet you all enjoyed that.
Thank you. I'm quite surprised nobody else wants to speak on such an interesting topic. Okay, we'll move on. Something very interesting. Item 12. Staffordshire means back to business. Oral update. Done.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We may or may not at Uttoxeter have a situation in the new year in the fact that one of our companies, Alps Biscuits, which is probably the second highest employer for the town, may or may not close, and we may have lots of people out of work. At the town council meeting last week, a member asked the question, what are the county council and the Staffordshire Borough Council going to do about it? So they're going to write to us. And I see here that actually Staffordshire County Council will get involved, and I hope that the Cabinet member will work with me to try and help here. The Uttoxeter Town Council have offered the Town Hall free of charge so that we can use it if we need to for job fairs, which the SBC will be able to help us with. But I notice here that we have the Staffordshire Triage Service, which we may need to use to help people with redundancies then soon find work. As I say, we don't really know at the moment which way it's going to go. That's why Councillor Atkins and myself have asked questions, but we haven't been able to do a lot because we don't know whether this company will close or not. So if the Cabinet member, please, could work with me in the new year, if this situation arises, I would be very grateful. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Philip Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I look at the screen and I think everybody called Philip wants to speak on this item. I sincerely hope that this council shares Cannock's delight in getting £20 million, because delight wouldn't even get close as to how pleased we are. We have a lovely, vibrant town centre in Cannock. Whenever we do something, we get a reaction. We've reinstigated the market days, or revigorated them. We've increased them, and Cannock itself gets really vibrant. We led on making sure that the cafes were allowed to put tables and chairs at the front, which seems silly not to be able to do that, but we made sure that they did, and now we have a real vibrant cafe culture in Cannock. We have a fantastic 12th century church. It is truly beautiful, sits in the middle of Cannock Town Centre. We have a bowling green, which I believe is unique. I think it is the only town centre bowling green in the middle of Cannock, in the middle of any town centre in the UK. So you can tell I'm excited, but on top of that, we now have £20 million to go and spend. So, as I say, excitement wouldn't even get close, and we hope this chamber shares that excitement. Can I, Chairman, if you'd indulge me, can I invite the leader and the deputy leader along to Cannock when they're free? And we'd love to show them around. We'd love to show them what we're going to do, and we'd love to show the pride we have in our town centre. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. There's, as happily is usually the case when we give these updates, there's lots of good news about investment in Staffordshire here, and there's also continuing good news about jobs in the county. So we continue to have very high rates of employment in Staffordshire, and we outperform both the West Midlands and the national averages in that respect. However, we do have to make sure that we look after every single person and every single business that needs our help. So to Councillor Hudson's question, yes, of course, I'll be happy to work with you. The most important thing, if there's a business in difficulties, is that you try and avoid it needing to make redundancies in the first place. The triage service that we have, which was set up at the beginning of the pandemic to address pressures that businesses would face as a result of that, has been a real success. And as is noted in the report here, the focus of that organisation is now on matching people to the many vacancies we have in Staffordshire. We have thousands of jobs for people to take, but it does still also provide that redundancy service to help businesses to avoid making redundancies, or if they do, to try and manage that process through. One final point on that, though, is to say if there is a large redundancy programme in any business, we will set up a separate bespoke team working with other agencies to make sure that that's managed properly. But to his point, yes, of course, I'll work with him on that. That's very important indeed. At the happier end of things, and to the other Phil, the Deputy Chairman, I'd be delighted to come and visit Cannock with you. I was at the MacArthur Glen retail outlet only a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pleased to say that even on a midweek visit, it was very busy. And it's a great asset both for Staffordshire and for Cannock District. But it is important when you develop one part of a town like that, and that retail village, for those who haven't visited, is on one edge of the town centre. It is really important that you balance that out, and that investment through the Levelling Up Fund of £20 million to balance the, I think it's fair to say, as you've talked about the church and the bowling green, the old Cannock Town Centre, Old Cannock,
it's really important that that also receives that investment to make sure that it's an attractive place for people to visit and is relevant in their lives. So I'll be delighted to pay a visit with you, and we can look at what we can do to help in that process. Thank you.
Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to also accept the offer of Councillor Hewitt to come and visit Cannock. I've not been there for a while. In fact, the last time I went, I think I went clubbing. So if you'd like to take me clubbing again, Phil, I'd be grateful. I know you're off your dancing legs at the moment, but I'm sure you'll be back on them in the not too distant future.
That was obviously a very long time ago. Item 13, COVID-19. Councillor Johnny McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. With your indulgence, Chair, I'd like to come in at the end if anybody else raises any issues first so I can field any questions.
Nobody else has requested to speak.
Fine, in which case I'll crack on. Thank you. When these papers went to print, it was the case, and remains the case, that the numbers are high in Staffordshire, but now slightly less than the English average. It was the case, and remains the case, that this is largely driven by children. Previously, it was the 12 to 18-year-olds. Now it's the younger children, the 5 to 11-year-olds. And it also remains the case, thankfully, that the elderly are not getting it the way that the children are. That the number of elderly getting the disease remains stable. It is also the case that currently hospital admissions remain stable. However, since it went to print, we have the Omicron. This new variant that has come from South Africa that's a variant of concern. What do we know about it? Well, there's three things we need to know about it. The first is it more contagious? And it seems pretty clear that it is. It doubles in communities every 2 to 3 days. On the 2nd of December, exactly a week today, it was in 19 countries, with community spread evident in Europe, particularly in Belgium and in Israel, and ourselves. Is there vaccine escape? Does the vaccine work with this to the same effect? The scientists, we don't know. The scientist thinks there might be some escape, but we don't know how much, but the vaccines will still work. Does it give milder disease, or does it give more severe disease, or is it the same? It's far too early to tell. So because of the possibility of vaccine escape, it's really important that we do what the government has asked us to do. So we all know that on the 27th of November, and then again yesterday, we're now asked to wear masks in all indoor settings, including worship, theatres, and cinemas, with the exception of hospitality. We all know that we have to use COVID passports or have a negative flow test for nightclubs, for unseated venues inside of 500 or more, for unseated venues outside like festivals for 4,000 and more people, or for anything over 10,000. And we also know, as from Monday, we will be asked, if we can work from home, to work from home. But also, and really importantly, the vaccine project has been turbocharged to a significant degree. The 12 to 15-year-olds will now get a second dose, and everybody over the age of 18 will be offered a booster. This is called, the government calls this the evergreen offer. So the question is, where are we in terms of the vaccine program currently? In terms of care homes, we're the highest in the region at 76.9%. There's some care homes that have not been visited currently. That is because there have been outbreaks in those homes. But every time there is sufficient time after the outbreak, they will visit the home, that's 28 days, they will visit the home and vaccinate the residents. In terms of the housebound, they've covered, which is always a lag. Housebound always seems to be difficult for this project but currently 74% of the housebound have had their booster. And the PCNs have been asked to prioritise that venture throughout December to make that higher. And all those over the age of 50, 72% of them have had a booster, which is the third highest in the region. So we're reasonably okay at the moment compared to others, but given the turbocharge required because of COVID, we have to do a great deal better. So where are we going forward? I've been assured to some degree by the NHS, but not yet quite enough. They think that there's another 367,000 vaccines to be done by the end of June. They currently have a capacity of 48,000. They have a maximum capacity of 90,000. And the reason they haven't been working at 90,000 is because the demand recently has been lower. But they can go even higher than 90,000 if they need to. At its highest in February, they were doing 115,000 vaccinations a week. And in May, for those requiring the second booster from February, they did another 115,000. So they tell us the capacity is there. But we need to look under the bonnet. We need to be clear that those who are underrepresented, the underrepresented groups, those who are disproportionately impacted by the virus, that they too will be vaccinated, that people won't be lost, and that the system has the capacity to deliver. So in that regard, the Director for Health and Care and I are meeting the NHS on December the 17th, and we've invited the NHS to the next Local Outbreak Control Board, and that invitation has been accepted, on the 21st of December. And I'll happily, after the Local Outbreak Control Board, update the Council by email on where things stand, because this is crucially important. It's also the case that this is an ongoing venture. COVID will not go away quickly. And I'm grateful to the Chief Executive of the County Council for his military analogy. He says there's expeditionary ventures and that there's enduring ventures. That the NHS in particular, but many organisations have taken an expeditionary approach to this, where they throw the kitchen sink at it, but that will not work in the long run because it's not sustainable. And we have to look at ourselves to make sure that we're sustainable. I believe we are in what we do. And we have to challenge other agencies, particularly the NHS, that they move from an expeditionary response to a more enduring response. And in doing that, I think that might settle some of the primary care issues that we're all anxious about. As a county council, we sit in the Local Resilience Forum, which has all the major players, public health players in the county, including the districts and boroughs, the NHS, the utility companies, the police, fire and rescue, to make sure that given any restrictions, that the system remains sustainable. And we're assured that it does, and that the LRF is doing the right job. Our COVID defences will remain in place, and we have the capacity to upgrade them if need be, for test and trace, for managing outbreaks, for supporting the most vulnerable, for contingency means in place, such as passports and working from home, that we've already prepared ourselves from that, and COVID security, which looks at high-risk places such as high-risk businesses, high-risk areas, that we have that covered. So I'm satisfied as a county council we're in place, and I will update you as to where we are with the NHS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just for information, it is normally 5 minutes, but this was such an important topic. We had all the changes last night. I felt it was necessary to allow Dr. McMahon to continue until he completed what he was saying. So thank you, Doctor. I've got one more speaker on this now, Councillor Derek Cookfield.
Can I just say, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't really keen to speak on it, but after watching the television last night, right, it's frightening. Because at the end of the day, right, I've had 3 injections, right. I've also had the flu injection. I hope all of you in here have done exactly the same thing as me. Right? I can't prove whether you have or whether you haven't, that's up to you. But when you come to look at it, the amount of people in hospital, 4 out of 5 haven't had the injection. And it's very, very, very serious. It's more serious than you realise. My life, your life, is being put in danger. We could be dead tomorrow, as easy as look at it. That's how really serious this is. And I would urge everybody, right, and take note, right, that if they haven't had the injections, they get them done. Not just for themselves, but for people like me. I aren't a child anymore, right? I can't fight it off like everybody else can, like a younger person, right? And even those are suffering. As you get older, your immune system isn't as strong as what it was when you were younger. If you had the flu when you were younger, you used to lap it off. You used to go work with it and you say, oh, it doesn't mean a thing that, you've got a bit of a cold. But when it comes down to this disease, it's frightening. And it keeps passing around and passing around. And these people that stand outside where they're giving the injections, they want shooting. And that's putting it politely, because what's happening is they're standing there and they're stopping people from going in to have the injection. I think it is absolutely disgusting. And can I urge once again, everybody that hasn't had the injection, go and get the injection. Think of me, think of your mother, think of your father and your grandmother and your children and everybody else. Put them first, because we've been talking today, we care about all the children in Staffordshire and all the country. We don't want any harm coming to them, and this is one way where you can do your part. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I support everything you said except for the bit about shooting people. Okay? Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to give Councillor Huckfield reassurance that I'm always thinking about you, Derek, especially at Christmas time. But you do make very excellent points about getting the injection, and I would join you in imploring people who haven't yet had it to go and get it. There are assumptions made by people who haven't had the jab. Particularly younger people. I work with a man who's in his mid-30s. He refused to get the jab because he's got a very active job, he's fit and healthy, and then about a month ago he tested positive and then became iller and iller and iller until he could hardly breathe. So it affects people badly when they get it, okay? So it's a really important point you make. Mr. Chairman, may I just endorse your comments about not shooting people, especially not around Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item 14, winter bonus for home care staff. Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to help you out, I switched my light off last time. Another way of helping care home staff is to get vaccinated. I thought I'd use the clever way of getting in there. I noticed in the COVID-19 update that was sent out on the 12th of November that there are areas in the county that have got really low vaccine uptake. And I took the opportunity when there was a Staffordshire Ambassador event at St George's Park to have a quick chat with one of the key members of the Burton community as to why they have such a low uptake of vaccine. The 4 wards at the foot of the vaccine table are Anglesey, Shobnall, Eaton Park and
Councillor
Burton.
Atkins, are we on item 14?
Yeah, we are. We're on about helping care home staff. Because all are having less than a 50% uptake, and Anglesey stands at the lowest at 36.9. Jamil told me that they were unaware of what was going on. Well, surely they must have understood that care homes and the residents need protection with vaccination. That is another way of helping care home staff besides the bonuses. Our care home staff have done a fantastic job. And I know that Saeed and our staff have done a really good job of trying to persuade their communities to get vaccinated. But echoing what Derek has said, echoing what Derek said in the previous item, the best way of helping care home staff is to get vaccinated.
Thank you. Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted that our excellent home care staff are being recognised and rewarded in this way. But how will this one-off payment resolve the long-term shortage of staff? I mean, they've been through a lot over COVID, and unfortunately, I don't think they're paid enough, and very often the status of a job is determined by the pay and not by the huge commitment that they give us all. So what I want to ask is, what will success look like in terms of the numbers the County Council hopes to recruit? What is the present vacancy level? And when will home care staff get this bonus? And how much will each member of staff expect to receive? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Julia Jessel.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is a bonus not for care home, but home care staff. These are staff that go out to people's homes. And as we know, the demand has been increasing. And as Councillor Charlotte Atkins has said, we're aware that the pressures in terms of recruitment and retention. This grant that we've been given by the NHS is fairly unique. I think we're one of the first authorities in the country where, because of the close working that we have with the NHS, they've actually given us this grant because it's in their interests, our interests, and the interests of the patients and people that we look after, that actually people who need to be discharged from hospital can be discharged in a proper, timely way. And of course, one of the problems that is being caused is that lack of capacity within home care. So this is a one-off payment to actually enable us to have incentives that will maximise the availability of service and maximise how we use that service. If I can give as an example, there are some packages of care which are quite complex. It enables us to pay providers, and it's not just Nexus, it's also private providers, a bonus to take on those packages of care. Because if we can't do that, those people can't move successfully back into the community. It also enables us to work with providers to ensure that they maximise their use. If I can say, and this is the green thread, we want to try and encourage providers to cooperate more with each other, to perhaps exchange packages of care so they're not doing miles of journeys and crisscrossing each other. It makes it far more efficient in terms of their staff time, and also it reduces the unnecessary mileage, which, as I say, is that green thread that we're all being challenged to do. So this is really a very useful sum of money. It will enable us to improve the recruitment and the retention. That is the prime thing. It's expensive recruiting staff all the time. It's time consuming. What is important is to try and retain staff. Now, on top of this 2.8 million, we have just received, and it will come in 2 tranches, a sum of 2.397 million from central government. That is far more prescriptive in what we can do, but if I can give as an example, it will enable care providers to pay their staff overtime and potentially help them with childcare costs. If you've got very young children and you're not eligible for the voucher scheme, particularly the extended holiday period at Christmas and New Year, it's probably better for you not to take on any shifts. It enables providers to actually help to support the staff with childcare costs. So there are a whole range of initiatives that we're doing with this NHS funding, but also that we will be doing with additional funding from central government. Now, I'm the first to admit that these are one-off payments and will enable us to make the most of our resources, make the most of ensuring that we provide the right packages of care to people through the winter months. What I'm sure we would all hope is that we get a 3-year settlement from central government so we can plan in a far better way. In that way, we can work with our providers, with the NHS. One of the things we want to do with an NHS is perhaps to set up a reservist model of staff when things get very difficult, that they can actually come and help to supplement the staff in the home care market. We need to look at the career structure, the training, perhaps joint training with the NHS, so that it improves the status of people who work in this profession. You know, the NHS have been acclaimed, particularly in the last 2 years, and I know some people who work in care homes and home care feel that they've not been acknowledged. What I'm looking for is hopefully a longer term settlement, but in any event, I can assure councillors that we are looking to the longer term, because this problem won't go away, but I give you my assurance that we will be looking to incentives to resolve and plan far better in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Item 15, winter operations. Councillor David Williamson.
All the sevens, clickety-click. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would like to pay tribute, actually, to the teams that have been out, especially over this recent storm onwind. They've been working in really, really difficult conditions, especially up in the moorlands, where we've had 4 to 5 feet of snow and snow drifts. We've even had to have snow blowers out, and for days they worked tirelessly in really difficult and challenging conditions on our behalf for our residents, and I think we need to pay tribute to them, and that's what I'm doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Just as a side to that, the Vice Chair and myself are going to be visiting some of the depots, because there's been quite a bit of anti-media coverage moaning about them not doing this and that. So just to give them some support, we're going to visit the depots late at night, perhaps go out with the trucks and just give them the backing that they need for work and the hours and the times they've been doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate that you are doing that. I'd just like to add my thanks to the teams and the hard work that they do. As we're coming home in the evening, having our tea, getting settled in for the night, they're on the way out, working through the night. It's a really tough job in really tough conditions. And up in the moorlands, as Councillor Jill Heath will tell you, it gets cold, the snow gets deep, and it gets tough. It says here that operations start as early as October for our crews. I think in the moorlands it might start in August, and all the way round to July. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your note of appreciation, and can I add that to mine as well? Thank you.
Just very, very short, Jill.
I'll try this one. Oh, it's on now. Yeah, thank you for those comments. It's not as bad in the moorlands as you'd make out. At least not the part of the moorlands that I live in. I'm fairly sort of safe down there. But yeah, there are some roads that we could do with a little bit more gritting, Councillor Williams. Some people who do object to not having the grit lorry as often as they want, and I've had to chase quite a lot of grit piles up. But hopefully we've had the worst of it now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 16, Stafford Western Access Route. Councillor Jonathan Price.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, as a Stafffordian, it would be remiss of me not to have talked about this. Firstly, I'd like to say, I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for the work that's gone into this. And I'd also like to thank Staffordshire County Council and our partners. This has been a joint venture to unlock land for housing development, and it's fantastic. I was lucky enough to be invited to the opening the other day, and that was a really, really good event. I thought I'd just raise a couple of points on the SWAR itself that maybe as some people may not be aware of, and with the absence of Councillor Simon Tagg and our green thread, I thought I might just read these out if I may. So firstly, on our green agenda, there will be 2.2 kilometres of cycling route, which is excellent. 2,359 native trees and shrubs were planted. Bat boxes and mammal crossings. I haven't seen the mammal cross, I'm not quite sure how they work, but I will certainly have a look. 24,000 cubic metres of recycled materials. And then obviously it was the flood work that we also did. But more importantly as well, we restored 8,160 square metres of former car parking back to marsh habitat. And this land lies adjacent to Doxey Marsh's triple SI. So I just thought I might raise those as well. And just shows the work that we are doing and all the projects we do going forward, that green thread and the work that we do is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As some of the more established members will know, I was part of the team that previously to David that was dealing with the SWAR. And it's been a fantastic achievement. And I think John Tradle, the one bit that really sticks out for me was in terms of trying to get the contributor subscription into the scheme. We had a meeting which felt like about 15 hours. I think it was only about 4 hours, but we really had to sort of sit down and fight it out for the developer contributions. But the whole thing, this has been going on for probably 20 years. It's not a new thing. It's not something I was involved. I started, or Phillips, or started by the previous administration. It's been going on for a good while. What it does, it unlocks 2,500 houses in Stafford Town Centre. It helps the Stafford Borough with their aspirations for the Stafford Gateway. And it creates, or will have created, a minimum of 100 jobs. And I think a lot more will come out of this because it is fantastic. In terms of, as I said, it's not just Staffordshire County Council. It was a £63 million scheme, one of the biggest schemes that we've done as a county council for probably a very, very long time. £15 million of that was from the government through the Stoke-on-Trent LEP. £2.8 million, a lot of money for a borough council, was put in by Stafford. And £15 million from the developer contributions, which I just mentioned, and the balance being Staffordshire County Council. But it's not just about the cost, it's about the aspiration and the work that's gone in from county officers. And it's been brilliant working with those guys through my time when the SWAR was being put together. They are true professionals. They were forward-looking, innovative, and as just been mentioned by Jonathan, they thought about the environment as well. And one of the big bits for me was that we gave back some of the marsh to Doxey Marsh. That helps with the biodiversity. It also helps with the flood management in the future. So I think it's been a brilliant scheme, and I'm just so delighted every time I use it now because it's my side of Stafford. It is absolutely brilliant. Amy, there have been some sort of concerns about some other bits of Amy, but in terms of the large development, the guys that work on it, they were talking to locals, they were talking to people who were sat in lockdown in the garden, listening to piling, explaining to them why it's got to be done. It has been a brilliant project, and I think as a case study, it's something that the county ought to say, this is how it started, this is what we did, this is what we can do in the future, because there's a lot of good lessons to be learnt from that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor David Smith.
Yeah, Chairman, just a quick point. I'm sorry on this item on the agenda that it doesn't also refer to the success of the Lichfield Southern Bypass. But I would ask the question, as far as both roads are concerned, whether we have a post-opening check, once they become live with active traffic as opposed to something on a computer, whether we recheck the safety. I'm thinking particularly as far as Lichfield is concerned, where I think there's a hazard that's been created by the new road. But I wondered whether the same might apply as far as the Stafford Western Access route, whether we review this, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Atkins.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that there needs to be another line in the paragraph, which is, this is a fantastic example of how local the government can deliver on major projects. I echo what Mark Winnington has said and David Smith. And going back in the history of it, the Stafford Western access route wasn't very high up in the regional Assembly's list of projects. It was way down at the bottom, just as I-54 and the development of that site was, which is now Jaguar Land Rover and a whole host of other things. So back in 2010, when the Conservative government got rid of regional assemblies, we had and brought in the local enterprise partnerships, we had the opportunity to prioritise road projects across Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire. And out of the three, hundreds of projects, we prioritised them on deliverability, the amount that they could help the areas and everything else. And Lichfield Southern Bypass and the Stafford Western access route and the Etruria access were the ones that were top of the list. And I'm pleased to see that by working with all partners, the LEP, Stafford Borough, for a borough council to put that amount of money into a project in the middle of their town is a lot of money. You know, the county council put 11 in, but they put nearly £3 million in. The conversations that went on with landowners and various other people, and Brunswick Terrace will always be on my mind, and all sorts of things. But it's delivered, and it's going to do great things for Stafford. But let's move on to the next set of projects, because there needs to be a pipeline of projects to deliver, to help our high streets, to help our towns. A bit of a hiccup with the Lichfield Southern Bypass, because we had to get the money from the GBS LEP as well as the Stoke and Staffordshire LEP, and it wasn't one of their high priorities. It was 12 out of 12. So there's a lesson there, as I said. This is something for local government, Staffordshire's local government. And I'm pleased to see the announcement that the County Council will continue working with our district councils. But we have to remember our neighbours both within our donut and outside our donut, because quite often to deliver on projects, you have to get everybody else involved. I was in a national meeting earlier on this week about UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the future. And it's a little bit uncertain as to how these things are going to go down, but you have to get the money on merit and outcomes, and this project has delivered on that for Stafford. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Pert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to associate with Philip Atkins' comments, because I think he makes a really strong point about how one project can open up so many other projects off the back of it. And it is about having vision across multiple partners. And whilst and I welcome the opening of the Stafford Western Access route, whilst that costs £63 million, that is only a part of what is being spent in our county town, which is seeing the benefits of £125 million being spent at this moment in time as part of a whole range of different packages to help regenerate the high street, to help bring in employment, to help bring in increased educational provision. Some of the work that's going on is in terms of £20 million on the Future High Streets Fund. A spend in further education of £28 million with Stafford College, bringing in a brand new STEM centre to increase the quality of education that our children see. It also comes off the back of an investment of about £3 million in Victoria Park. And for Mr Hewitt, I'd just like to gently mention that there is a bowling green as soon as you get off the train station in Victoria Park, probably one of the jewels in Stafford's crown. I would also get killed, metaphorically, not literally, by Councillor Trowbridge if I didn't mention that as part of that there's also an ice rink, albeit, Mr Hewitt, I would recommend you didn't go and use that this afternoon if you had free time. But my points are really that you need a vision, and I believe Stafford, our county town, does have a vision to live, work and thrive. And then you need partners who want to go and deliver it. And so whilst I welcome the Stafford access route, I also welcome the continued and ongoing investment into our county town. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And yeah, it was an absolute honour to open both these Stafford Western Action Route and the Lichfield bypass, both which were started to be used immediately. And seem to be working very well, and I have to say I think everybody's noticed the differences with the congestion in and around Stafford Town Centre already. It's definitely increased and it's given us a much more efficient travel throughout the town, and for certain areas I know Councillor Price gets to see his daughter a lot easier using this new route, so that it's definitely a positive. There is business, there are jobs, there are housing. And it's also something that we need to remember is the large amount of engineering works that went into it. This is the first ever use of board displacement piles in the UK. Absolutely, really very different way of working, to be able to put piles that we can then place a road on top of on a marsh area. So absolutely brilliant bits of engineering, and working with partners such as Amy has been really, really useful. I'd like to also thank the LEP and Stafford Council for giving us some extra money to be able to get this in. And from Councillor Smith's issues with safety, yes, we do check on safety, but as with any road, if any member has any issues with safety or concerns, please report them on the staff's app and we'll get them checked out. But I think everybody can agree that both the Lichfield bypass and the SWA, great pieces of engineering, removing the amount of vehicles going through Lichfield, its town centre itself, and now we've got a much easier access in and out of Stafford. So good pieces of work this council has done. I will pay tribute to Councillor Withington, who did a lot of work in that at the start, and from over the 18 months that I've been working with the teams, absolutely professional. And something we did learn, as people are talking about lessons learned, one of the things that we definitely learned and has come off really well was when we have a large project like this, having that little hut there people could go and speak to somebody, actually talk to them on a regular basis, at least weekly, made a big difference for that entire community. And it's something that I've also already spoken to my teams about, that if we have such large projects in the future, we need to look at introducing something like that to make sure that we can communicate with our communities and make them aware and allay their fears as we go. But other than that, great pieces of engineering and a job well done.
Thank you. Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to talk briefly to the pipeline of projects that Councillor Atkins referred to. Of course, we don't stand still at all in this authority. We're always looking for the next and the next and the next. And two in particular I just wanted to draw Council's attention to. One is the A50-A500 corridor project, known as the North Midlands Manufacturing Corridor. Councillor Philip White is working hard to develop the plans on the deliverability of that, what it will look like, how we will integrate together. We have to work together with other authorities on these projects, Cheshire East, Stoke, Derby, Derbyshire, City of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and we are making good, strong progress in that area. That leads nicely on to the improvements of the A38 and road and rail access from Birmingham up to Burton-upon-Trent and Derby. Only last night I was having a telephone conversation with Andy Street, the Mayor of the West Midlands, about how we can turbocharge that project so we can improve accessibility for the people in the south of the county. So pipeline is there, we're working hard on it, and the SWA is just one of many successes I look forward to us having over now and in the future, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lunch is going to be served at 1 o'clock. Because of COVID and people want to use comfort break, I'd rather break now, because the next item we're going to talk about is community funds. I already know that there's 4 or 5 people want to speak on that. So to make sure we can dine for 1 o'clock, I'm now going to call a halt now, and we'll return at 2 o'clock. Okay? Thank you. Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome back. We're still on the leader's statement, item 5. So now we'll go for leader's statement, item 17, the community fund. Councillor Keith Lunder.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just really wanted to give my thanks to the officers and to also the Member of Cabinet to extending this particular admissions to the fund. It made an awful lot of difference to myself in my division. I think I managed to get another 6 or 7 applications in during that extension period. And I'm just really glad that it will help all the events in my division go ahead and other things get to happen. So can I just give my sincere thanks to everyone for listening to what some members were saying. And as I say, on behalf of all my residents, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to actually allow me to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Charlotte Atkins.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all delighted that we're able to spend our community fund by investing in local projects, and that's very much to be welcomed. But in view of some of the difficulties that have arisen, I'd just like to ask how the community fund, and for that matter the climate change fund, is audited to ensure that the monies received are spent as intended. Is that down to the county councillor to ensure that happens, or is that regularly audited by the county council administration? Because I think what's important is that this fund is seen to be doing the good that we want it to do in our own communities. It only requires a few ones to go wrong for that to be undermined. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a very good point raised. I actually check, if I give money to somebody, I actually check that it's being used for what they came and asked me for. So I give them some money for to a theatre school for a hardship fund because some of those children come from very poor backgrounds. And I went and checked only recently that the money is actually being used for that. And I think I recommend all councillors follow up because it is public money after all.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? Because the Cabinet Member Victoria Wilson would like to speak last. So does anybody like to speak before Mrs Wilson? Okay, I'll call Councillor Mrs Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Of course, we are looking very closely to make sure that we are transparent and are auditing all of the community fund applications. We have quite a rigorous process in place to achieve that. For example, we have initial checks by officers, approval, of course, by the local member themselves, approval by the Cabinet Member, myself, as well as the leader, and then final checks are done by officers with delegated authority in the Constitution. If there are any queries that haven't been resolved already, they are investigated, and then at the end of the period by which the money ought to be spent, we are asking councillors to go back and check as well as officers making other checks, so that we have a really robust way of checking that this funding is being spent in the right way at the right time. Just talking about the community fund itself, as you know, I've been supporting this for quite some time. The community fund has been an amazing initiative for some years now. The funding's been able to offer a lifeline to many groups. One of them, whether they're sort of the larger, bigger organisations with large projects, or if it's just a very small voluntary group who just need a table around which to sit so that they can have members of the public come and meet for a cup of coffee and conversation. All of these things can really not be underestimated. A small helping hand can often make a huge change, and we absolutely hail this council's community fund as a means to achieve great things within our communities. And yes, I was really pleased, in answer to Mr Flunder, to be able to extend the scheme for a further month, to allow groups who are only just getting started again to benefit. We've had a total of around £156,000 of applications received, which is incredible. And I absolutely applaud everybody that's pushed this initiative, and I cannot wait to see some of these projects come to fruition by April next year. Thank you.
Councillor Alan White.
I just wanted to confirm that I'd had confirmation from the monitoring officer that these funds do indeed get audited. In fact, Councillor White's got his computer up here, and I can see that he's got an email that he received today, as it happens, yesterday, asking for the evidence of spend for an application that he had. So the review is undertaken by the council. It is ongoing, and there's a sort of dip sample, if you like, to make sure that random samples are checked, and that should give us the reassurance that you need to be confident that the money's being appropriately spent. There are occasions where things go wrong, and that's the case with anything like this. We do like this thing to be relatively light touch, because the communities that are in receipt of these funds want to be able to spend them quickly, and the difference that you make as councillors by being able to put forward these grants within your communities can be absolutely tremendous. A little bit of county council money via yourselves as the elected representatives for an area can really make a huge difference to a community group who might be struggling to just get that last bit of the way to achieve a project. So thank you for everything that you do. It's really appreciated, and I'm sure it's appreciated by the communities that you serve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The last item on the Leader's Statement, item 18, 2021. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. Normally, one of our ex-councillor, Councillor Alan Dodson, used to wish you these festive greetings. So I would like to take this opportunity to convey our Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And it was a tough year, past few months, and I hope that things will get better soon. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, I'll call the leader, Councillor Alan White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Hussain, for those kind words, as always. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody, and I hope next year is going to be better What do we think? All right. So I hope you have an enjoyable time. I hope you get some time off. It has been hard work for councillors and our communities over the past year, and I think everybody deserves a bit of rest. So I really hope that you're able to take some time off, put your feet up, maybe have a glass of something nice to celebrate, whatever you drink. I know that some members of the council, it's a particularly busy time for them over Christmas. Councillor DeVille will be hoping to sell lots of beer in his pub and is always welcoming of councillors who might be popping his way for the odd pint. So, Mr Chairman, thank you very much indeed for your chairmanship in 2021. I look forward to working with you in 2022, and I hope you have a happy Christmas and a restful holiday.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mrs Charlotte Atkins, for the way you both have led your groups and for the independents who are members. Unfortunately, neither are a member here today, but from me, thank you for everything you've done to make my job sitting here a lot easier, so thank you. Okay, item 6, recommendation of the Council. Financial regulations at A. Councillor Worthington, will you move the consideration of the report, please?
Mr Chairman, I'm very pleased to move the recommendation by the Audit and Standards Committee. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Atkins.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, I'm assuming we're taking procurement at the same time. I just wanted to ask, under the item...
No, we'll be taking them separately.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Okay, Councillor Worthington, do you want to sum up?
No, I think the fact there's no questions, obviously it's been very scrutinised by the committee, and we meet again on Tuesday as well, so I'll report back to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it has been moved and seconded that the recommendation contained in the report be approved. Is that agreed? Aye. Thank you. Change the Constitution. Amendments to the Council's procurement regulations.
Consideration of the report, Mr Chairman.
Seconder. Councillor Mrs Atkins.
Thank you. Sorry for coming in too early. I don't think I've ever really read the procurement regulations before. So I was looking under sustainable procurement, social and environmental values are referred to there. Does this mean that the County Council's policy is to procure supplies and services as locally as possible? And what proportion of the County Council's procurement is sourced locally in Staffordshire? I don't know if anyone can give me that answer. If not, maybe at the subsequent time. Thank you.
Councillor Mark DeVille.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mrs Atkins. Massively important. You'll know, members, that I bring a report on procurement of different items to, I guess, most cabinet meetings. And I think in almost all of them, Councillor Atkins, there's a not a clause, there's a paragraph in there whereby we are offering the opportunity for local companies to carry out the necessary works under a certain procedural agreement. This week at Cabinet, for instance, I'm bringing a report on property maintenance, and in there clearly is a real opportunity for local bricklayers, plasterers, electricians, etc. to take part in that framework and that scheme. So whilst I couldn't possibly say that it's exclusively local people, there's certainly a massive opportunity to take on board local people for all of the maintenance work, which makes up much of the procurement framework that we're talking about. I think the second part of your question is what percentage. I'll find out that for you, Mrs Atkins, and send a note around members covering that point. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Worthington, do you wish to respond?
Councillor DeVille has explained that, as is the commercial cabinet member. I think that's perfectly okay.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that the recommendations contained in the report be approved. Is that agreed? Aye. Thank you. Item 7. So we've just finished. So item 8. Questions, understanding... No, where am I? No, we're not. Sorry. It is... So item 7. Report of the Chairman of the Staffordshire Fire, Police and Fire and Crime Panel. Councillor Richard Cox, will you move the consideration of the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as Vice Chairman, I will move the report for consideration. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak on the report? No. I move... So Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to welcome Mr. Noble for our constable new appointment. And he has a vast experience in Northern Ireland from coming here, and we look forward to work with him. And also I would like to, on the record, to thank Police and Crime Commissioner Ben Adams, and about 10 days ago he managed to come to see my divisions, and on foot he visited all the local businesses and met with the residents as well, which was well appreciated as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the report be received... My apologies, I'm going to be confused. Councillor Mark DeVille.
Very briefly, Chairman, along a similar theme, I'd like to heartily congratulate Rob Barber on his appointment as Chief Fire Officer for Staffordshire. Rob was an excellent Assistant Chief Fire Officer, so very best wishes to Rob. I'm sure he'll do a great job. And thanks and congratulations to Becky Bryant, who has been a tremendous Chief Fire Officer, Chairman, for a number of years. Very efficient, very effective, and a thoroughly nice person as well. Congratulations to them both, and very best wishes to them both, Chairman.
Thank you, and my thoughts go out to both of them as well, having worked with them as part of the Fire Committee. Councillor Richard Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to come back on both of those, Chris Noble and Rob Barber. Both came across to the panel as being extremely competent, and I think we look forward to it. So we were very happy to endorse the Commissioner's recommendations. They clearly, I think, will be a benefit to Staffordshire, and they're very much welcome. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Item 8, questions on the Standing Order 8. Members, the questions and answers have been circulated to members and published on our website in accordance with the usual procedure. The question and answer will be taken as read. I will allow each questioner 5 minutes in which to ask a supplementary question and to receive an answer. No debate is allowed on questions. The first question was from Councillor Pritchard to Councillor Alan White. As Councillor Pritchard is not in attendance today, there will be no supplementary question. Secondly, Councillor Oates to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Wilson, for the answer and the support for Community Together CIC Tamworth. I wonder, would you agree that the voluntary sector, as we've seen during the last 2 years, is an essential partner, particularly in early intervention, and can only support the public sector going forward? And that local government should do everything in its powers to enable the voluntary sector to perform and fill in that gap in early intervention, rather than putting blockers in the way as local government has done in the past.
Thank you very much for the question, and yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that suggestion. As I mentioned before, Some of the voluntary groups within the county are achieving exceptional things, and we cannot underestimate their role within our communities. And that obviously goes for the VCSE as well. I'd like to build on some of the work that's happening around. We've been engaging with parish councils, with district councils and boroughs, using webinars to share ideas and collaborate together. And also, of course, three-tier working is really, really important to us as well. So we want to incorporate all of that into the work that we're doing with the voluntary sector in the county. Of course, our volunteers are essential and are hugely appreciated for everything that they do for us around the county.
Thank you. Councillor Jones to Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his response and happy to meet with him in the future. I have no supplementary. Thank you.
Councillor Clements to Councillor David Williams.
I have no supplementary, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Atkins to Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Chair. A comment's been made there about the ability of providers to pay competitive wages. Well, surely providers cannot pay competitive wages, partly because the county council can't pay them more, and that the people who are paid for by the county council are subsidised by self-funders. So I suppose the question I'd like to ask is how much additional funding do we need from government so that we can pay, or we can help through our fees, ensure that these staff who've been through hell and back during the pandemic can be paid an appropriate level of pay to encourage them to stay within the sector rather than going off and perhaps, you know, shelf stacking or something in supermarkets, rather than endure the sort of 18 months, 2 years that they've endured over the last period. It seems to me that given that so often nowadays that people's pay determines on, you know, what sort of reputation they have and what sort of status they have, that it's vital that we pay, that providers pay staff an appropriate wage for the expertise and for the responsibility they take looking after our loved ones.
Councillor Jessel.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As the written response has said, there is an additional 3.6 billion over 3 years to fund the care cap, but as yet we don't know the exact amount that we will be allocated. It is a complete change of how the funding will be applied, but as to exactly what funding we get, as we know from the initial reports that, of course, a lot of the initial 3.6 billion will go into the NHS. I have reported to you today of some short-term funding, but we've yet to know the full detail. We will potentially be working on a scheme to actually model through what the costs will be to us, and hopefully central government will ensure we get funds. I think one of the other things that I would like to say is that it's been known for decades that with the demographics of the population, there will be large numbers of people, my age, in effect, coming through requiring care, and less younger people to look after them. So it's not only just about the wages, it's how we deliver these services and how we, through public health, try and help people to stay physically and mentally fit for as long as they can, so that people can retain that independent quality of life. It's not just length of life, it's quality of life. So there's a whole matrix of work that needs to be done, but we wait to see what the funding is. And as I said earlier, I do hope that we get at least a 3 years so that we can plan. But I am well aware of the pressures on the care home and home care sector, and we are working with them and with Nexus to help that situation. It's in nobody's interest for that service to be under the pressure that it's under. And as soon as we know the situation, councillors will be appraised of that.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Atkins to Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chairman. The figures in the reply are reassuring, as the Children's Commissioner for the country said after Arthur Labinjo Hughes' tragic death that school attendance was a key figure. And I would ask that the Cabinet member join with me in thanking schools for the work that they do, and children's social workers for the work that they do in ensuring that the children are safe.
Thank you. Councillor Pedesi to Councillor Jessel. As Councillor... Sorry? Councillor Price.
I might install a big red flashing light over here as well, just in case, but thank you very much. No, absolutely, and particularly around the schools and the social workers as well. Some very tired-looking teachers out there at the moment who, as you would think, their job is to educate our children and make sure that they are all in school, but we all know are working above and beyond that. And I spoke to a fellow councillor this morning who's got a daughter that is a teacher, and he has told me as well that they monitor those children for the first 30 minutes when they go in, just to make sure that they're all right. And it's really pleasing to see as well. I think our teachers thoroughly deserve a break as well, the same as us councillors, and this Christmas is certainly going to give them opportunity to have that, but the work continues next year as well as we go forward. We get approximately, or we have approximately 120,000 children within the county which are currently in schools, apart from a small percentage of them, but we, as I said, I would like to support Councillor Atkins in his thanks to our teachers and the social workers and the huge amount of work they've done in a very challenging time, and is continuing to do so. So thank you Councillor Atkins.
Thank you. Councillor Pedesi to Councillor Jessel. There has been a written answer, and as Councillor Pedesi not here this afternoon, there will be no supplementary question. Item 9, petitions. Does any member have a petition they wish to present? Councillor Charlotte Atkins.
Yes, I'd like to present another 1,000 signatures. This is the second tranche of this petition, and I think anyone who knows anything about collecting names for a petition will know how particularly difficult it is to do it in very bad weather, as we have experienced over the last few weeks. But this petition has attracted now, as I said, the support of 2,000 people concerned about speeding within Leek and the impact that speed has on health and safety, the shopping experience within the town centre, and also on our conservation areas. So I do hope that consideration will be given to introducing a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit within the town of Leek. Thank you.
Thank you. On my agenda, it says item 10 excludes the public, but there is no work that's going to be done with the public excluded, so I call an end to the meeting. Can I thank everybody for your attendance today, and as I said earlier, have a lovely Christmas, a peaceful New Year. I know there are some committee meetings, cabinet meetings still to go on, but this is the last time we all meet together until the New Year. So thank you very much, everybody.